Well, good evening, everybody. We are live and direct tonight. Welcome into On the Hunt. This is our Saturday night show on the Cryptid Huntress channel, and I am fresh back from the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference in St. Petersburg, Florida. I've been driving all day, y'all, and I had a wonderful time. My goodness, I have not had time to process the entire event. I was driving over 8 hours today and just got home about an hour or two ago. And we are, man, I've got so much to talk about. We're going to do a little recap on that on Monday. So you guys hold tight. And yes, I'm back. I know I had to run a little rerun, but I ran the best of the best on Thursday night. My goodness, we showed the Missing Persons Clusters remote viewing show again with Barry Littleton. And so thank you guys so much for being there. I was in the live chat. I think that's a very important show. And that's one of my main things that I talk about. Even when I do presentations publicly, I talk about the missing persons clusters. And tonight we are going to be discussing a place where there is a missing persons cluster over in Alabama. I think there's a couple of missing persons clusters actually over in Alabama, but definitely around the Talladega National Forest. And you guys, I have the biggest treat for you guys tonight and for myself. We have Mark and Rebecca Green with us tonight. I'm so excited. I have got to hang out with them a couple times now over in Alabama, and we're going to be discussing all of Mark's investigations and Mark and Rebecca's encounters over in Alabama with Alabama Bigfoot and Dogman. You guys, buckle up. We're going to go for a ride tonight. Can't wait. Yes, I finally got a tan, y'all. I know I was joking around last week about how I was going to come back looking like a burnt sausage. Okay. I'm only slightly browned sausage tonight. Thank goodness. Okay. But nonetheless, thank you guys so much for being here. I see everybody in the chat tonight. Thanks to everybody for showing up this evening. And to all my moderators, you guys are the best. If you guys want to follow along with all of my shows and check out my archives, y'all please go over to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find my calendar of events. My next event is actually in a couple of weeks. I will be at a UFO conference. Okay. It's the World UFO Conference in North Georgia. And that is August the 2nd. That is in Demarest, Georgia at Piedmont University. I'll be there with John Price from Alabama MUFON. As a matter of fact, we're on an Alabama kick, y'all. Alabama MUFON and myself, James Rink, with the Secret Space Program. Y'all know my buddy James and Dr. John Stamey and Matthew Delph will also be there. He was our guest last weekend here on The Hunt. And so that's going to be a fantastic event. So y'all come see me at that. Okay. Also, y'all can find all my links to my Patreon, my shop, War Woman Goods over there on my website. Okay. But let's get to our show because we have so much to talk about. And I'm so happy to be back. So happy to be back. I gave a fantastic presentation yesterday, y'all. Y'all would have been proud of me, I think. Okay. I talked about cryptids. We talked about missing people. We talked about my research, my team's research. And I think we solved some mysteries of the universe yesterday during my presentation. Or maybe not. I don't know. I probably left people with more questions than answers. All right. Well, let's pull up Mark and Rebecca tonight. All right. So Mark is from, now I was hoping Rebecca would be here. This bio is mostly for Mark, but it's Mark and Rebecca, y'all. But Mark is from one of the most southernmost parts of the Appalachian Mountains in central Alabama. He had his first sighting in 2007 in Lowndes County, Alabama. I think that sparked his interest and got him into Bigfooting. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But he has some Bigfoots that inhabit this area called Creepy Mountain. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. And I think this is his hunting lease that he may still have, or he used to have. We're going to get into that as well. And of course, he and his wife, Rebecca, who's here as well, they have a wonderful YouTube channel. I go in there and I try to hop in. I think it's every Friday night. It's called Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead, and it's about homesteading, farming, and they discuss Bigfoot experiences. And I already know there's a few people in the chat tonight that I see in their chats. So thank you guys all for being here. And please help me welcome to the Cryptid Huntress channel tonight, my buddies, Mr. Mark and Miss Rebecca Green. Hey, y'all.
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing?
Hey, thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us on. I appreciate it.
Well, I've been looking forward to this. I've been wanting to get both of y'all on my show for a long time, ever since I met y'all at the East Tennessee Squatch Out last year.
That was fun. That was a good little trip. We enjoyed that. That was a beautiful place up on top of that mountain.
Oh, yeah. It was.
How I was the only one that came home with thousands of bug bites.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, that was a lot of fun. I remember Joe Parker came over and was like, hey, why don't you come over to our campfire over here? And I got some people that I want you to meet. Okay. And after I gave my little presentation that night, and it was y'all, and I was so tickled to get to meet y'all and get to hang out. And my favorite thing was actually getting to go out in the woods with y'all too, over at Hollis. Is it Hollis or Hollands? Hollands Hunt Camp.
Hollands, yeah.
Hollands. Man, that was almost life-changing for me when I left that night. Y'all know that, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you texted me the next day and said, started asking me all these questions. I knew then. I said, something went on.
It did.
Yeah.
Something went on. I don't know what I saw. I saw something I had never seen before, y'all. And I think it might have been Dogman, as a matter of fact. But I know I want to get into what y'all have experienced, your history with Bigfoot. But I figured let's start off the show tonight with talking about our most recent adventure that we took all together out there at Hollands. And you guys invited some people out, and we had a big old crowd out there. And tell me a little bit about Hollands and what y'all got going on out there and the history behind it.
Well, Hollands is part of the Hollands Wildlife Management Area, which is part of the Talladega National Forest. Of course, Alabama manages that area in there for hunting. There's always been a lot of activity going on in that area, not just on the management area, but on places, private property around it. It's a very active place. Been multiple, as we call them around here, boogers, Bigfoot, seen. The Dogmen, at first I thought when people were saying they were seeing them, it was maybe because the hype was going on about Dogmen, but yet when you started seeing pictures and people talking about it, I figured out pretty quick they were really seeing stuff like that too. But the other thing about Hollands, it has a lot of paranormal going on with it. Orbs, flashes of light, vibrations.
Weird.
Just weird stuff. It's just a very active place. Full of quartz. It's on the 33rd parallel. Sylacauga, where we live at, it's on the 33rd. That's in the 33rd parallel. Largest marble quarry in the world is here in Sylacauga, which is just a few miles from Hollands. Only place a person been hit by a meteorite they know of recorded
And
lived. So
wow.
we have Gravity Hill. It's a place where
put your car in neutral and it goes up backwards.
it rolls backwards uphill. or roads forward uphill, however which way. So there's some oddities in this area.
And the headstone that kept getting hit.
Yeah, we have a guy that got hit by lightning several times while he was alive, and then after he passed away, lightning hit his tombstone and destroyed it several times.
Not just
What?
once.
Yeah, so there's some
What? That is
lot of
wild.
oddities here. So
He was made of metal or something. That, I've heard about the Falkville Metal Man. Was he the Falkville Metal Man?
he may have been, but I mean that's just
Some of the weird we have.
the whole. I'm gonna say about a 30-40 mile radius has a lot of weird stuff. And Hollands is inside that. Uh, and of course, going north, you're going toward Cheehaw Mountain, which has a lot of stuff too. It's just a very. This area had a lot of Native Americans living in it, a lot of villages. It was where a bulk of the Shawnee lived for a while, the Creeks, and of course, before all them was probably the Mississippian. Of course, the Coosa River is close to here, which is a big river. It comes out of North Georgia. Uh, so, just a lot of history going back with human history, but also going back with cryptid and paranormal stuff. Um, so it's just a real strong area for a lot of stuff. Uh, but Hollands itself, I've hunted down there a good bit over the years, and I always noticed the place was odd down there. But a guy who was kind of my mentor in the Bigfoot world, uh, his AKA name was Tal Banco, but his real name was Billy White. He was part of the Alabama Bigfoot.com, along with the late Mike Mullane. They used to have a big website, and it covered Alabama and parts of Georgia and a little bit of Mississippi. But he went to some private property not far from there that I had previously hunted on before. And this was after me and him got to talk about Bigfoot because he's the one him and Mike was the one how I really found out a lot more once I seen my first Bigfoot down in Lowndes County. And he told me about Hollands because he walked the creek up from the private land into the management area, and he was finding tracks everywhere. And then he drove into that area and hung out some. And he told me, he said, that's a very active spot. So I started watching it. Of course, there was another Bigfoot researcher at that time that was visiting that area too. And he had some outings there. And then later on, we had some outings. And then we had a meet and greet there last year, along with woodwalkers, and had a meet and greet. We had a good time. Had a lot of stuff going on at a meet and greet with over 100 people. It's just crazy that we had that much activity with that many people there. But most of our outings been there have been very small, 25, 30 people, which is we've always had something happen there. Some good audio has been caught from there. Uh, People have seen stuff there.
Weird things caught on camera.
Weird things caught on camera. Rocks been thrown at people.
I got my first rock there.
Yeah, that's where Rebecca got her first rock thrown at her at. I figured it would have happened on Creepy Mountain, but it never did happen up there before. It happened at Hollands. So, it's just a weird place. And it's a big management area. I think the management area is 30 something thousand acres. And it's some of the last mountains of the Appalachian area. It's kind of where the mountains end, and it just gets into gentle rolling hills, we call them. But heading on toward, South Alabama, where the Gulf Plain is. So it's a strong area, just very very active, and
It's active, very active. And I got a really I got a bad feeling actually when I was leaving out of there. Well, here's the thing. I always tell people, don't go out in the woods by yourselves, you know. I was not out there by myself with y'all, but when I left that night, I was in my truck and I was by myself and I had my doors locked. But I was like, I kept telling in my head, I was like, oh God, I'm afraid I might die if my car breaks down. It was really creepy when I was leaving, and I do remember making sure my doors were locked, and stuff as I was driving down that road, and and sometimes I get I like to think like, man, I'd love to see like a Bigfoot peek its head out at me as I'm leaving someplace like that, but I wasn't really thinking that so much. I just wanted to get out of there.
Right.
When I left. But that was actually the time where I pulled out on that main road after I left out of the WMA there, and I pulled up the road a little ways, and I saw something I had never seen in my life on the side of the road, and I still to this day I told my audience about it. At some point, we had a discussion with my friend. I think it was Cryptid, who's in the chat right now. My friend Mark, and who lives up at the LBL. And we talked about it, and I was explaining to the audience it looked like an African dog, but a bear, but then it looked like a panther. It looked like three different things. It was the oddest thing, and it was all black, and it had these really white teeth, real white teeth. And after I sent you that message the next morning, Mark, I think I sent a couple people messages that were out there, and you wrote me back and said that you might have known the person who owns that property, right? And they had some activity out there.
Right. Yeah. Of course, I can't give his name or exact location because they don't want to be on YouTube. But I can go into it a little bit without giving away too much about where their property is and stuff. But right there where you seen that, of course, you was heading toward a major highway.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a creek that comes through that property. It's a pretty major creek. Most of that area is farmland and woods. That's all it is: hay fields,
Mm-hmm.
cattle, pastures, and timber. Most of it. There's some chicken houses close by, and I always remember about chicken houses. Where chicken houses are, you're gonna have boogers somewhere around them. And Mr. Tao taught me that because he used to go up to Coleman and Morgan, Winston County, Alabama, a lot, where there's a lot of chicken houses, and that's where a lot of he was getting sightings from or around chicken houses. So there are some chicken houses real close by, but that area, when I really got to know this guy and really got to talking to him, at first, he knew I was dealing with Bigfoot because somebody told him. So he kind of slipped up to me where I work at, and we started talking. And he said, he asked me, he said, "Well, I hear that you investigate or research, Bigfoot." And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, I don't really call myself a researcher, but I said, "Yeah, I try to go to places where stuff's going on and look around, or if somebody wants me to come to their property, I will." And I've done that a lot in the past. I've been to a lot of people's properties. And he started telling me things that were going on. He said they've had calves go missing in the past. They couldn't find no signs of the calves. Usually, if it had been a coyote or a dog's or something of that nature, you would find part of the remains usually. They would find no remains. They were finding footprints. They were hearing a lot of vocalizations at night from the creek area that they couldn't explain. His brother actually seen one twice with two different ones. When he was, I think, 12 or 13 years old, he actually had one charge him on their road going down into that creek bottom, and he actually discharged his shotgun at the thing. Of course, when he hit it, it turned and went off back toward the creek. Then years later, he was not too far from that area, but in a different little area hunting, and and he was up on the side of the mountain hunting, and he'd been there for a little while, and he said there was a big brush pile down below him about maybe 70, 80 yards. And up on the side of that mountain in the wintertime, you can see pretty good because the trees are spread out. And he watched this black figure come up out of this brush pile. And at first he thought he may have been looking at a bear, but then he got to realizing it was on two legs. Uh, it started walking up the hill toward him, kind of, at an angle a little bit. And it kind of disappeared from view for a few minutes, and he got kind of nervous, so he come down out of the tree. He said about the time he hit the ground and started walking, he heard walking behind him, and he turned around and could see it. He said about 100 yards from him, and it started trying to catch up with him but get parallel with him. He was trying to get to his truck, and he said this thing was trying to act like it was trying to get in between him and his truck. He said it was covering ground in a hurry. So he decided to take a little different direction and to get to his truck. And he ended up making it to his truck, but he said the thing was right on top of him when he got to the truck. He never gave a good description of it because he said he never really stared at it a lot. He was trying to get to the truck, watching where he's walking and keep up with it where it was at. And of course, he said he would never hunt in that area there again. He quit hunting in that area. So he's had two experiences. Some of their other family members have seen stuff run across the road on two legs. They've seen figures standing in their pasture. And then not just that, they've seen the UFOs that fly that mountain range at nighttime with no lights, quiet. They're usually triangle shaped. And I can testify to that one because I seen that myself one time over there. Me and two guys. I used to be an avid coon hunter. So I was in the woods at all times of the night. And we had one come over us one night. And the only reason we knew it was there was the shadow of it came over us. And we looked up. And it was triangle shaped, but it did not make a noise. No lights. And I don't think nothing could fly that slow that humans have made. That's my opinion. This thing was moving so slow, I don't know how it could stay up in the air. So I can't tell you what that was. It was flying from south to north, right up that mountain range toward Cheehaw. Of course, back in, we had a military base going, Fort McClellan, since it's been shut down, but they didn't really have aircraft up there. That was more of a chemical warfare MP base. Now, of course, down South Alabama, there's some Air Force bases and stuff, but either our military's got something that is very quiet with no lights and they can just glide real slow, or that wasn't something human to me, So, but that's kind of what goes along with that property. They've seen that. I know everybody's familiar with the Brown Mountain lights up in North Carolina. Well, that mountain there at certain times in the winter has that same thing going on, where these orb-looking lights come up off that mountain and they shoot straight up. Not just them. There's a lot of people in this area know about that. It don't happen all the time, but when it does happen, a lot of people end up seeing it, especially people traveling that highway. Of course, some people say it's just lights, people up in the woods and stuff, but I have never personally seen it myself yet. I've seen orbs out there moving around, of course, but I haven't seen the stuff come off the mountain and then shoot straight up and disappear. I have not seen that.
I have not seen. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say I do some of my research out in that area too, and have definitely seen orbs out there. So I can back that up. I have seen plenty of orbs out in that forest.
Oh, yeah.
And I've never seen any shoot up in the air, but I mean, I know of instances where they have actually formed into triangular like multiple orbs have turned into like triangle patterns and stuff. I mean, it's weird. Stuff gets real weird out there in the Talladega forest.
Well, it
Okay, and
is.
around that area, for
Yeah,
sure.
from the north end to the south end, there's a lot of stuff. It's a big national forest. It's
Yeah.
what 400 something thousand acres, and it's 80 miles long, 90 miles long. So it's a big national forest. It's not real wide, but it's real long, and it's a lot of it nobody goes in because there's no roads. Uh, in fact, the Forest Service has actually put in a lot of gates now, and they don't ever unlock them no more. If you going in there, you got to pretty much walk. And
I don't. I giggled a little bit because I remember I tried to go out there and meet y'all last year, and my GPS went nuts. It sent me off to like it said White Oak. I never forget. It said White Oak, and I
yeah,
was trying to yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just turned out and I turned left off the highway, and I was like, wait a second, this isn't a road, this is a hiking trail or something, and I just kept going because I was like, oh, I've been to some weird places to go bigfooting, and about I think I drove over 2 or 3 creeks and a river, in a burn. I was like, all right, this ain't it, this ain't it, and it was pretty crazy out there. So I don't know if it was just the GPS. It was my fault. Okay, I should have probably gotten better directions before I left, but
well,
it was all my fault. But
what
still,
I've noticed, what I've noticed is that GPS wants to take people through that white gap, and that road is not open anymore.
White
Because you
Gap
can't go up the mountain because that road's washed out.
is
I don't know
burnt.
why. I guess somebody needs to contact Google and say,
GPS.
"Hey, this
Yeah.
road does not go through all the way anymore." There's another road like that. It's called Sage Gap, and it doesn't go through all the way no more. And so
Yeah.
those two roads need to be marked if they're not through roads. But
They
yeah,
do.
I
Some
know
put
where
a
you was
sign up.
at.
We need to put a sign up.
Yeah, they need to put a sign up or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Put a
But,
big old X out there, like don't turn left on White Gap. Okay. Whatever
well,
you do.
right there where you was at, not far from there, is another little primitive campground, and oh,
Hey,
sister gonna
doggy.
be in the show, but
How
uh,
cute. We
yeah,
have a
she
third
always,
guest tonight.
yeah, this is sister. Most everybody know who sister is. She's the star of the show for us most of the time.
She thinks.
She's
Oh, hey, sister was at Hollands, wasn't she? Did I meet
oh yeah,
sister?
oh yeah,
I
she
did.
goes with us about everywhere we go. So she's
She's a sweetie.
part of the family. She's something else. All right, and then stop now. That's enough. Get back down there. But not far from where you got stuck at, on the opposite side of the road, there's another primitive campground in there. It's a very small one. People camp there occasionally. A lot of the people that ride horses park there with their horse trailers and ride those roads in there. But back in the early 2000s, there was a guy that wasn't from this area. He was from another part of Alabama, and he came to hunt on one of the scheduled deer hunts on Hollands, and he got off work late that night and drove down to Hollands, and he was just going to sleep in his truck in that campground till daylight to where he could hunt. And I think he said he got in there around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He done went to sleep, and he was just in his driver's seat with the seat back. He said all of a sudden he felt his truck start shaking, and he kind of woke up, and he said there was this big figure standing in front of his truck with his hands on the hood doing this now and shaking
Oh,
his truck.
oh
So, of course,
gosh.
it scared him to death. He could not see the head because the head was that up much further up above the cab. All he could see was, shoulders down. And he said it was humongous. Of course, he started his truck and drove out of there uh, and got out of there real quick. And in fact, when he went to Silicaga, to the little town close by, and that's where he stayed till daylight. He went back out there, but he didn't go to that area. He went to a different area to hunt, and So there's a sighting from that side of the road. Not far from there are some government lakes. Uh, those government lakes, we call them the watersheds here in this part, but there's three of them, and it feeds into another one that Sylacauga owns. That's where a lot of Sylacauga's drinking water comes from. But there's a lot of activity in those areas too. Um, it there's one guy that I was talking to that was fishing one of the bigger lakes late one evening. He him and his friend, they in these lakes you can only use a trolling motor. You can't have a gasoline motor in them. And they were starting to troll back toward the boat launch. It was getting about dark, and they started to keep hearing limbs cracking and uh, stuff happening up on the banks, but they could not see it. Of course, as they get closer to the boat ramp, it intensifies. More limbs. Then they start seeing stuff thrown in the water, like limbs and sticks and rocks. Of course, by the time they got to the boat ramp, it was pretty much complete dark, and they could still hear stuff walking in the woods around where while they was at the boat ramp there close to them. They was trying to get the boat in the truck, and he said, that when he talked to me about it, he said, and he heard some vocalizations that he said were very strange. It's hard to redo those that he had. That he told me how they went. And then there's another lake not far from that one that's a lot smaller. They've been seen there several times. One guy was fishing, looked across the lake, and one was standing on the other side of the lake looking back at him. He said that one was around 7, 8 foot tall. Stared at him for a minute and then turned around and walked back up in the woods. Uh, Coming back closer to Sylacauga, still in the national forest area, there was a family that kind of like this other family I was telling you about, where you seen what you seen, that had dealt with them for years. I ended up. I didn't even know I had went to school with the lady. She was a few years younger than me, but she had contacted me through the AlabamaBigfoot.com, and went to talking to me about stuff they had going on their property when she was growing up, and so I ended up getting to meet her in town one day. We drove to town and met up in town, and actually drove out to what used to be her family's property. Pointed to the house that she grew up in with her grandmother. But how it started with them, they used to walk to Sylacauga, and one day they was walking back from town because the national forest is right on the border of Sylacauga. I mean, a couple miles out of Sylacauga, you're in the Talladega National Forest. So they were walking back home. They had got to a very wooded spot. There's a section in there that's very wooded on both sides of the road, and they noticed something was paralleling them in the woods as they was walking toward their house. Of course, they got kind of nervous. They couldn't see it, but they could tell something was walking, with them. Well, they get on up to their house, and they mention it to their grandmother that something paralleled them in the woods, and she said, "Well, y'all get on in the house, And so one night, her and her sister shared a bedroom, and there was a street light out in the front yard, or a night light, however you want to call it. And the way her bed sit, she could look right out the window into the front yard, and she could see the road. Well, one night she was there awake. Her sister fell asleep, but she was sitting there looking out that window, and she watches this two-legged looking creature come off the other side of the road, ease across the road, right next to the wood line, into their yard. Well, a few minutes later, it disappears, of course, walking, and it goes toward their backyard. and they had chickens back there. And she heard the chickens get tore up.
Oh
So
no.
she got up, went and told her grandmother something was going on with the chickens. Well, one of her uncles lived right up the road, so her grandmother calls it to be her son, but the young lady's uncle. So he comes down there and they don't see nothing, but she thinks, and of course the next day to come to find out they did have a missing chicken. So I'm figuring the booger come up there and snatched, one of the chickens that night. There was another time they were, and I'm not going into full details with them. I'm kind of keeping it, short, but you know what I'm saying, to the point, kind of. But
Yes.
some of these would take a while if I go through every bit of everything that happened. But one day they were out in the front yard playing kickball. Uh, they had some cousins over or something, and one of them kicked the ball too far, and it went into what we call privet bushes or hedge bushes. We got tons of them around here. Well, the ball went in there, and she went in there to get it. And when she went in, she picked the ball up, and when she kind of stood up in there, maybe 15, 20 foot in front of her was something squatted looking at her. And she said it looked like the same thing she watched walk across that road that night. So she comes, of course, flying out of the bushes and runs and tells her grandmother, and her grandmother's told her, so look, uh, y'all just need to be careful out in the yard and need to be in the house before dark. Uh, so that's just some of the stuff that's come from that side of the national forest. Then, of course, with Hollands, abandoned tents have been found with everything still in them. Uh, we had an
And
outing
they sat there for how long?
for
That
over a
one we
month.
found?
Over a month.
Yeah.
We had an outing down there. This has been about 3 years ago, I think I'm correct.
Small one.
A small outing. We had about 30 people. When we got there, we noticed there was a tent off to itself uh, from the main campground. It's down in a little old leg of the campground. Didn't really think nothing about it. You could tell all their stuff was still there. You could look down there and see a cooler. You could see other stuff, outside of the tent. We didn't think nothing about it. We thought maybe
Gone off for the day.
somebody gone to town to get something. We didn't pay it much attention. Well, come that night, nobody never showed up. Now we started kind of like, well, that's strange. So the next day, several of us decided to walk down there, and one of the guys that was with us had prior law enforcement. His prior law enforcement. So we went down there. The first thing we noticed was this camp had actually been abandoned for a little while. But one of the first things we noticed was the zipper was tore out of the tent, and that you could look in the tent from the door. It was open enough that you could still see clothes. Some of it was kids' clothes. You could see all kind of different sleeping bags. We opened up the cooler. There was still food all in the cooler, but the cooler, of course, the food and stuff done spoiled. There's a camping stove still sitting there. A water bag full of water. Cheers. So he ends up going into the tent, and he finds a woman's identification, her social security card, phone, all kind of stuff.
That's weird.
So we knew then, all right, now, this is done.
We got a problem.
We got a problem here. So he goes and turns this in to the game wardens or the forest rangers. I don't know which group he really turned them into, because actually the Alabama game wardens have jurisdiction on that area right there, but the Forest Service does too. And so he went and turned that in. But the whole time he went and turned it in that day we found it. Well, we still never seen law enforcement show up to check that place out while we were still there. Of course, we left everything alone. And when we all left on Sunday, the tent was still down there. Just odd, A few days later, I contacted him and I asked him, well, have you heard anything or anything? He said, no. He said, they just took the stuff and said they'd check it out. Well, in the meantime, I started going down there just kind of being curious what was going on. And that tent ended up sitting there over a month before it disappeared. So we don't know if the Forest Service finally cleaned it up or law enforcement. I don't know. It just disappeared. So that really got me curious to looking into missing persons in our area. I couldn't find nothing at the time. There was nothing about anybody in our area being missing at that moment, in that time period. So we really do not know what went on with that. Uh, so that's one of the weird things from that campground.
Well, what can I say? It's really interesting that was found. That's very suspicious, and
Yes.
nobody just goes off and leaves their ID in their phone these days. Nobody.
Right.
And I wanted to kind of bring this little point up right here because one of the heads, one of my teammates lives out in Alabama. He's out in that area actually, and he did a FOIA request actually because where he lives is not too far from where that gentleman and his fiance got accosted by those two women out at the Talladega forest, and he's dead today because of that. She pulled a gun out and tried to rob them, and he ended up shooting her, and she shot him, and he died, and it was a fiasco. But Trey did a FOIA request on that. And I guess it's okay that I talk about this. I hadn't talked to Trey about this, but I think it's important that people know some of the key points of that FOIA request over what happened with that, because we were told in the news that there was a cult out there, almost like a cult, like a religious cult or something that was living off grid. Turns out there were like 5 of them. 5, not just 5 people, 5 different encampments out there. And and they actually, in the FOIA request, it actually involves witchcraft and stuff. Okay. A lot of weird stuff. They said that there were actually like statues that involved witchcraft or something. I mean, I have to talk to you after the show about it because I can't remember all of it. But it's important that we know, for people who live out in Alabama, for people who go out into the Talladega forest, there are off-grid encampments of big groups of people, maybe not huge groups, but like 10 or more people at some of these encampments. And so we gotta be careful and watch out for that.
I'll tell this, and this was even before I knew about Bigfoot existing. Even though I knew something was in the woods before I even seen what I seen, just because all the years being a coon hunter and fishing on the river at night, and being, I grew up in a family of farmers, hunters, and fishermen, so we was outdoors all the time. And I've heard, crazy stuff at night that, of course, you kind of write it off. You say, well, some kind of animal making a different racket, and a lot of other things happen. But after 2007 and started really seeing what was going on, I figured I'd done had a lot of encounters and just didn't realize it at the time. So, but me and another guy were raccoon hunting one night. Not on the southern part. We were a little more north, going back toward Cheehaw a little bit. But we were still closer to the city of Talladega than we were Cheehaw. We lost our dogs. We couldn't hear them. And of course, back in, we didn't have GPS for our dogs and all that stuff like what they do now. So we were riding roads looking for our dogs. We'd go down every little peak trail we could, trying to hunt these dogs up, because it was strange that these dogs just shut up. And usually, if they didn't strike a coon pretty quick, they was usually back at the truck within 20, 30 minutes. And we done got in a couple of hours. So we turned down this little old road, and we knew it was an old homestead in there at one time, because there was an old barn down in there. And so we pulled down this road, and it's a narrow little road full of hedge bushes and briars, but we could tell some traffic been in and out of there, which we thought maybe deer hunters been going in there or something. So we didn't think a whole lot about it. We go down in there, and we get down there close to where the barn is, and that area is still kind of open. It's kind of like an old field. And when we pull up in there, there's 3 or 4 vehicles sitting in there. That catches us off guard. But this was like about 2 o'clock in the morning. And first thing I thought, well, it's just some kids hanging out down here in the woods drinking, and they come down here around this whole area. But what got me puzzled real quick was one guy went behind the car real quick. I said, whoa, wait a minute, what's he up to? I mean, he went around that car. Well, there's another guy kind of started approaching us. And I happened to look, and on one of the hoods of the car looked like a robe. And I'm like, does that look like a robe on that car? And I asked my buddy, I said, does that look like a robe? He said, yeah, it does look like a robe. Well, this guy kept approaching us. I rolled down the window and I said, hey, I hate to bother y'all, but we're looking for some dogs or hunting dogs. Have y'all seen them? No. I mean, he was real short with me. No, we ain't seen no dogs. We trying to, I don't forgot how he worded it. In other words, he's ready for us to get back out of there. And I told my buddy, I said, well, I'm going to keep an eye on that guy that run behind that car because I don't know what he's doing. So he started backing up, and I'm watching this. This other guy comes around that car, and, I mean, he just had a wild look on his face. I don't know what they were doing, but I think that was a robe on the hood of that car. I think it was a robe. I mean,
Ritualistic stuff. Like they were doing some kind of witchcraft or ritual or something out there. Probably.
Something was going on right there that night. And I mean, it felt eerie. I mean, it did not feel right in there. And me and him was proud to get out of there. And we got back on the main road and went about a mile. And there was our dogs. We was proud to pick him up. We come up home. We got out of there.
I was going to say, did you ever find your dog? I'm so worried about your dog.
We found him that night.
Thank gosh.
We got on out of there. And be honest with you, I have never hunted back up in that neck of the woods anymore. I just, something about that area I didn't like. And I've never have hunted back in there. But
that's why I tell people, don't go hiking by yourself, especially, and I hate to say this, but especially ladies, at least have something to protect yourself with. Okay. At least, and keep your head on the swivel at all times. It's not the boogers, as we call them. It's not the boogers we got to worry about. It's the people.
Right.
And the animals out there too, but it's mostly the people.
There's some more missing people from that national forest, some from around the Cheehaw area. I think there's one more from my area. Is an older gentleman that used to do a lot of walking. He would walk out on what's called 148, which is the main highway from out of Silicaga going into Talladega National Forest toward the Clay County. And he would walk that road, but he had another road that he turned on to go back to his house. They said he disappeared one morning and nobody's never seen him since. I took some booger reports not far from there. There's a creek called Crooked Creek. It's one of the creeks that come through Silicaga. It's right there at downtown Silicaga. I took several Bigfoot reports from right in there. I mean, within a mile of downtown Silicaga. This one was a guy with his 2 nephews hunting. It was getting close to dark. They come to a gate they had to go through out in the cow pasture, and it's right next to the creek. As he was opening the gate, his nephew at the time was 6 or 7 years old, started telling him, Uncle, I don't need to say his name, but he said, Uncle, there's something standing behind the tree peeping at us. Well, he turned and looked, and he seen this big head looking at him. And then he went behind the tree. Well, that got him nervous because here we are right at dark. He's seeing something that he don't think was a human. He gets the other nephew because he had put the other nephew was about 12, so he was letting him kind of hunt by himself a little bit. He gets him. And they get on back to the house. Then he gets a hold of me to come over there. So we go over to that property, and we go to the tree. And on the back side of the tree, there's maybe about 3 foot between the tree and the creek bank. And right there where this would have been was all padded down. You could tell something stood there. Well, I was standing up there looking down in the creek, and it looked like footprints. So I slid down the bank into the creek, and sure enough, there were footprints walking down the creek. And it was real cold that day we went. It was real cold in Alabama. It was probably that day the temperature didn't get out of the 30s. It was, and that night it had went down in the low teens. A lot of the shady areas of the creek still had a little form of ice on it, and I followed this set of tracks for maybe close to 100 yards,
Wow.
and it through a little patch of water that still had ice, and you could see where it stepped in the ice, and it went up this bank into a big cane break, and there was a hole in there about big enough for a human to go in there crawling. Not to walk, but I mean it was a big hole. Of course, I did not go in there because I said something is sitting in that cane patch.
That hole.
But definitely, I think that day that's what they seen. I took a lot of pictures of them footprints. They were put on AlabamaBigfoot.com when that website existed. It don't really exist. I mean, you can still find it, but you have to go way down in the web to find it. And that report is still there. Somebody found it here a while back and told me they found that report. Where in that same place, we found some hair on a fence. At first, I was leaning toward cows because it was a pasture with cows in it. But my other researching friend, Keith Tyler, he's one that used to do a lot of research with me. He said, "Mark, that don't really look like cow." So we ended up taking some of those hair samples, sent them to Mr. Tao out in Arkansas, and he had some friend of his that lived in Texas that worked for some kind of DNA company at the time. And I told him, I said, "Well, these may be just cow now," but I said, we found this in an odd spot. We found it in an odd spot. That's one thing that got our curiosity up, where it was at. Well, he sent it to his buddy that run the D. I got it probably wrote down. I could figure out the name of the place, but when the results come back, the guy said unknown hair. That's all he said, unknown hair.
Unknown.
It definitely was not cow hair. So, and it was red, and it was strands about that long, about a foot long. So
Yeah, that's not a cow.
So
No.
I mean, there were no horses in that pasture.
Like, that's wild. It sounds like it could have been like horsehair or something, but that would have come back horsehair because that's
right.
a known animal.
The only thing in those pastures were cows. So that was odd. And then this guy who lived there on that property also told me they'd heard a lot of vocalizations at night, stuff that was weird. They'd heard the whoops. He said one night it sounded like a bunch of people down there on the creek having a party. And so, that's just, and that came from that side of the, right there at the National Forest. In fact, on the back side of that pasture starts Talladega National Forest. So, and there are several other things have come from that area. Where I was telling you, the young lady watched it walk out across the road under the street light from where this guy lived to where she lived was maybe 2 miles across fields and stuff. So, so it's just interesting.
Dang. We actually have a question in the audience right quick. Okay. We'll take a little break and ask this question. Corey, Boondock Mojo says, could you ask Mark if he's familiar with the Alabama man who was slapped on the back by a juvenile Sasquatch behind his home? I hadn't heard about that one.
I haven't heard that one. I know some people that's been touched before. And now I actually had a cousin, and she came forward to me one time talking to me about it over here in this same area I was just talking about. There's some old roads in there that people used to go four-wheeling on. Had some big mud holes, and the kids, young people would want to go play in the mud holes, and they went over there one night. She had her own 4-wheel drive. What is it, babe?
I'm leaving.
Oh, you leaving us?
Yeah, I got to
Hi,
go.
Becca.
It's 3 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for being here, Becca.
See
Have
y'all
a good
later.
night. Okay.
So she got to a place she was going to turn around. She had her own 4-wheel drive. She was a tomboy, but she had 3 or 4 people in the truck with her. She was turning around in this spot. She said all of a sudden something hit their truck. She said it jarred it like another vehicle hit her truck.
Wow.
She didn't know what happened for a minute. She thought another vehicle, maybe with no lights on, had come up there and hit them. And the truck's shaking. And then one of the people in the back seat of the truck tells her, I thought I saw a man behind us, a big man.
Oh,
Well,
God.
she just goes ahead and guns it on out of there. So, and of course, she went to talking to me about that. And of course, she has learned about a lot about it because she lives on the west side of Creepy Mountain. And she hears them a lot of times doing her vocals from that side of the mountain. I'm on the east side of it. She's on the, so she she's pretty sure that's what hit her truck that night. In fact, they went back the next day to look around. They didn't find no tracks because she thought maybe a stick come up and hit the truck or something like that. But she said there was no sticks, no rocks or anything that could have hit that truck that hard to rock that truck like it did. So I'm pretty sure one maybe walked up and hit the back of that truck when she was turning around and she just didn't see it. But that one person sitting in the back seat got the glimpse of something back there. So,
Well, that's not a good feeling. Even if it was a human, that's still spooky, a little
right.
spooky. Now, you had mentioned Creepy Mountain, and I wanted to talk about Creepy Mountain with you tonight
Okay.
because that is some of your hunting land right now. But
Right.
do you live beside it? Is it close by?
Yeah, 2 miles from it.
2 miles. Well, tell me about Creepy Mountain because you've had a lot of experiences out there. Your neighbors are having experiences. What's going on with that area out there?
Well, it's another very active place. I'm still in that hunting club. It's private land, but and it's a mountainous area. It's a little group of mountains. I think the tallest part is 1,400 feet. So I mean, they're not like North Georgia mountains, but when you walk up that thing, you know it's a mountain. But it's about 10,000 acres in there. Uh, Nothing in there except for there's a 7-acre lake in there. Uh, but it's kind of surrounded by a bunch of private land, a lot of farmland and other timberland. But Creepy Mountain, I'd been going up there all my life, hunting, fishing that lake, camping, and I've heard some stuff up there before that was strange, but didn't really think about it. But when I had my sighting in Lowndes County, Alabama, which is next down to Selma, and then I started, going in the web looking at Bigfoot stuff in Alabama. That's how I found AlabamaBigfoot.com. And when Mr. Tao visited this area, he wanted to go up there, and he always used the elk call. He said you could take an elk call, the male, and blow that. And he said if there's any boogers around, 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer it. They're going to say there's something that's going to come from that. So he does that. We carry him up there one night, and he blows that elk whistle. And no sooner had he blow that whistle, we got 3 responses back from 3 different directions. And he sat there real quiet for a minute, and he turned around, looked at us, and he said, "Yeah, y'all got him up here on this hunt club." But why we made him look at that was we started telling him about hearing the whoops up there, being up there with our coon dogs, and a lot of places they would not hunt. You could turn them out on a branch, and they just refused to hunt that area.
Oh,
Some of the other hunting club members have mentioned stuff about, hey man, there's something weird up here on this mountain. Well, After he came, me and Keith, my researching buddy, we really started going up there a lot. And we started going up there at night. Because Mr. Tao told us some things to do, and we would just go up there and sit in places. We wouldn't build a fire, and me and Keith would just sit there and talk a while. And we started catching eye shine around us, or we'd start hearing stuff. Uh, my kids had gave me a set of the hunter ears one year for Christmas. Very nice set. One night, I decided to carry them with us where I could hear better. And that night, me and him parked in what we call the four-way. The four-way has had a lot of action. It's a little area right there on the club. It's not far from that lake. There's a big beaver pond, and there's a beaver pond on top of a mountain. That's just crazy, but there's a beaver pond up there. This place we call the four-way, we were sitting there, and I put these hunter ears on. And Keith makes a call. Because Mr. Tao had kind of told us what kind of calls to make, and we done got to practicing with it. And Keith just makes this one call. Nothing repeats back to us or responds to us. But all of a sudden, I start hearing walking coming toward us with them hunter ears on, and I can tell it's two-legged. I can tell it was two steps.
Oh,
Walks right up there within probably 30, 40 feet of us, but we cannot see it. I could hear it breathing with them hunter ears on. Because that's how good them things can pick up. It was amazing how good they can pick up. So me and him started learning more and more. We started having them come up around us. We could tell when they was around us. So we go to up it up a little bit. We're going to start feeding. So we picked out a place on the club that we knew humans didn't go much. And first time we went in there, we carried peanut butter jars. Because Mr. Tao said he'd had good luck with peanut butter. So we're not thinking. We put them up on side of a tree about 3 foot off the ground. We shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. We learned real quick that the deer, the raccoons, and other animals could get to it very easy. So I told, and two, having the lid off, insects come to it and everything. So me and Keith got talking about it, and I said, why don't we get us a gutter nail, bring us back a step ladder where we can get up higher in the tree, and instead of opening that jar, why don't we just drive that gutter nail all the way through that jar into that tree?
Now, Mark, what is a gutter nail? Just like a long nail? It's a big one,
Yeah,
right?
about 10
Okay.
inches long. Yes,
I
about
was
10
about to
inches.
say that's a big old nail.
Yeah, it's a big
Okay.
old nail. Yeah, it's about quarter-inch thick, I'd say, maybe a little thicker. Yeah, so
That's
so
smart.
we started driving drive these nails through that whole jar into the tree, usually about 2 inches into the tree. So we do that with our first one. We come back, it and the gutter nail are gone.
And the gutter nail?
The gutter nail was gone. When I
Okay.
climbed up in the step ladder and looked at the hole, that hole was not watered out. If a human would have to have to work it up and down sideways, and then make a bigger hole where you could get that nail out. This was pulled straight out. The jar and the nail was gone. Never, we done a big radius, could not find it. So we done it again. It disappeared again.
Wow.
Nail and the peanut butter jar. We done it the third time. It disappeared. Now this time I found the nail 10 foot from the tree laying on the ground. And every time I do that, I would never put it back in the same hole. I'd go over some or up some, away from that hole. And this went on for about 3 to 4 times. And I told Keith, I said, well, we know whatever it is it's getting, it's got a lot of strength. We know it ain't a deer. We know it ain't a coyote. We know it ain't a coon, because I don't know of any coon or possum that can pull that nail out of that tree. And Of course, we don't have bears in our area. And I was thinking, I said, well, why would the bear want to run off with a nail? And it would probably eat the peanut butter right there. And we'd probably find remains of the jar. And these are the plastic jars. So, and we never found none of them. We looked for them. So we went to doing cookies. We went to taking Oreo cookies, putting them in a Ziploc bag. We'd tie a nylon string around them. And we'd put them way up in a tree where nothing could reach them. When we come back, we would usually find the string broke. A lot of times the Ziploc bag would be empty. There was one time when we got really floored, we came and found the Ziploc bag was not tore open. The Ziploc part was opened up and the cookies were gone.
Wow.
Only thing can do that is something with hands.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a bear or something, because a bear would have ripped it open with its teeth
Well,
and its claws,
coon
right?
or any
Yeah.
of that. Now, the other bags that we found tore did not have teeth marks in them. It was like how we would tear a piece of paper or something. So we knew that we wasn't dealing with a regular animal. That just gave us more information that, hey, we're dealing with something that's intelligent though. So we went on, started leaving. We tried some deer meat, but now this deer meat had been in the freezer. We tied it in a Ziploc bag, pulled it up in the tree. That never got touched. I do not know why. Only thing we could think of, because it had been in that freezer, something about that smell. Then I carried some watermelons up there, and I'm going to go into something deeper in a minute about watermelons. That year, I had raised watermelons. I like yellow meated watermelons. That's what I grow most times, yellow meated. And if you go on my Facebook page or look through some of our videos, you'll see big truckloads of yellow meated watermelons sometimes in some of the pictures.
And Mark, I need to let the audience know, because we've got people from all over the world. Yeller is yellow, okay, y'all. That's we say yeller in the South, okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody's wondering, yeller is yellow, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. I just had to clarify for the audience that's not from the South, okay. Okay. I love it.
But
I like those too, by the way. That's my favorite too. That's my favorite too.
Oh yeah, I love yellow meat.
Me too. It's sweet.
Okay. In fact, next month, Clay County, right next to me, has their yellow meated watermelon festival. So
really, well, Georgia over here is the watermelon capital of the world. I just passed through Cordele, Georgia, by the way. Okay, just little fun fact if anybody's wondering.
Yeah, they have that big watermelon festival over there too. Yeah,
they sure do. Yeah, but it's not the yellow one. Man, I love it. So Bigfoot's like watermelon, apparently.
Well, we took and tied one of my watermelons up in a tree. We got it about 6 foot off the ground. This was one that weighed maybe about 20 pounds. Now I tied this thing up all kind of ways because I wanted to see if he could get that watermelon out of those strings. So that thing was almost like a basket of strings. When we came back the next day, that watermelon was smashed up against the tree. A lot of it was still inside the strings. A lot of it was laid on the ground. I think we made them mad that time. They just got aggravated because they couldn't get that watermelon out. But that year, we got on in the hunting season, which was in late October, which was bow season. That's when bow season comes in Alabama. And Keith was up there he was going to go bow hunting a field. And he had a small doe walk into the field that afternoon, and he decided to take that doe. When he released his arrow and the arrow struck its, target, the woods around him erupted. He said it sounded like a bunch of apes going off. He said it just went ballistic there where he was at. Scared him to death. He comes out of the shooting house, takes off to his truck. When he gets to his truck, he said, well, I ain't going to leave that deer for whatever was screaming at me down there. So He jumps in his truck and goes back down the road to the green patch. When he gets down to the green patch, the deer is still there. The deer is still there, so he gets the deer and he jumps in his truck and gets out of there. Well, he goes home, dresses the deer out, and he decides that he's going to bring what's left of the deer back to that area right there. And he comes up there and he puts the deer carcass, what's left of it, not far from the field, and leaves. Well, he goes back a couple of days later and he finds something. Well, he calls me at home. I happen to be off that day. And he calls me and he said, "Hey, can you run up here on the hunting club to where I'm at?" We call that field number 7 field. He said, "Can you run up here?" I said, "Yeah." Well, I said, I said, "You all right?" He said, "Oh, yeah. I just got to show you something." And he said, "And I got to verify something." I said, "Okay." So I jumped my truck. Of course, it takes 20, 30 minutes to get up there because it's old dirt roads. You can't fly. And I finally get to him, and he said, "I had something happen to me up here the other day." And he went through about the, harvesting the doe and having all this hooping and hollering. And he said, "I brought back the rest of the deer, and I left it right down here." And he said, "It's gone." I said, "Okay, something took it." And he said, "Yep," but he said, "I want you to come see what was left." So I walked down there, and there's 2 watermelons laying there. Now, this is late October. My field had done quit producing way back in August. I done harvested all watermelons out of it. He said, "Is those your watermelons?" I said, "They look like them." So I said, "That does look like my type of watermelon." Because I grow a certain type, and it looks just like I grow tender sweets, and they got a certain design to them. So that looks like tender sweet watermelons. He said, "Well, let's cut them open." So we cut them open, and they were yeller meated. And I'm looking at him, he looking at me, and he said, "Did you notice watermelons leaving out of your field during the summer?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen some places. When you pick a watermelon out of a field, it'll leave a spot where it's been sitting. You can tell exactly where watermelon has sit." I said, "I noticed some watermelons were gone, but I've seen coyotes get them and drag them out. And of course, you got humans that come in the field and pick them up. But right there where my watermelon field was not around hardly nobody's houses, and you had to go behind my house to get into that watermelon field." And so he said, "I think that's your watermelons." And I said, "Well, it's crazy that they could have lasted this long. There's no way they would have rotted by now." Well, at the time, my father was still living, and I brought this up to my father. I told him about us finding watermelons on the hunt club, and told him what was going on. He said, "Well, you know that when we was farming a lot, we used to gather them in the summer." Of course, he grew up in the 30s and 40s. He said, "We used to slide them up under the bed on the wood floor," and he said, "We'd eat watermelon at Christmas from watermelons that they pulled in July and August." He said, "Long as light ain't hitting them and they stay at a certain temperature, they won't rot." So, and he said, if something up on that club was getting your watermelons in the summer, he said it could have been burying them in pine straw or putting them up under something where sunlight couldn't get to it and the temperature wasn't varying much. Because there are caves and stuff all up on that hunt club too.
I was going to say, it sounds to me like it got put in a cave. Speaking
Yeah,
of somebody who's investigated some caves recently, it's
uh,
cold down there. It's like
so
a
it is.
refrigerator.
So me and Rebecca done an experiment a few years later after we got together. Because somebody asked me about that, and they said there ain't no way them watermelon could make it to Christmas, or those from July to the end of October make it, without having rotten spots. And I said, "Well, no, these were still good watermelons. So me and her done an experiment. We took a watermelon I had grew that summer, brought it in the kitchen, slid it up under the table where there's not much sunlight hits. I pulled that watermelon out of the kitchen that next May. That watermelon was still not rotten or nothing. Now, when I cut it open, the flesh did look funny looking in there. I mean, I wouldn't eat it. It looked funny
Wasn't
looking,
fresh.
but it did not. It was still not rotten nowhere on the outside. So that watermelon went for almost a year under something on a wood floor. So that told me then that that is very possible that they could have been taking those watermelons, hiding them somewhere on the club for later use, and then when Keith gave them that deer, they came back and gave us a gift back,
It's
and
like
they
a
done
currency. Yeah, it
right,
was like an exchange.
yeah.
I
Well,
love
they
that.
done more. They used to give us flowers. I'm not kidding you. During the summer, when we'd leave food, we'd come back and find flowers, uh, a pile of hickory nuts or acorns, pretty rocks, and they would put it right here at the base of this tree where we were feeding at. You'd always find something there. Till the day the watermelon got busted on the tree, then they didn't leave us nothing else there. So you can see that we started getting, I guess you say, getting along with them.
Hmm.
And I will say this bunch up here on the Creepy Mountain has never really acted aggressive toward us. Now, I've been growled at, but I wonder a lot of times if it was really a growl. I wonder a lot of times if it was actually a form of speech.
Hmm.
But we had all that start happening. Well, we had another guy come in with us that got real interested, and actually he's the one that come up with the name Creepy Mountain because that's when later on finding Bigfoot, the late Paul Hosey that caught that thermal up there would come into play and all that. But
I know
Alan,
Paul. I knew Paul.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's
Paul
a
had been
sweet
up
guy.
there. That's where
Hmm.
he caught that thermal was up on Creepy Mountain that was on Finding Bigfoot back in
Really?
13.
I met him at the Alabama Bigfoot conference about 3 or 4 years ago, probably 4 years ago. It's a long time ago, seems like.
Yeah, he's passed away now. He
Yeah,
passed away.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a nice guy.
yeah, he was. But Adam, and I'm gonna say his first name. Adam was real good at audio. That was his thing. He started going up with me and Keith a lot, and going with me a lot up on the mountain. And he would put recorders out everywhere. And I tell you, we caught some very, very good audios. A lot of whoops, a lot of growling, a lot of yells late at night, sticks breaking. I don't know what all Adams got. I know he still got it, but he kind of backed up out of the Bigfoot field. But he had a lot of stuff. He he was involved with, and he was one of them involved with the thermal. He was there that night the thermal was caught. And there was another guy from Atlanta. They called him Woolly Booger. You may know him. I cannot remember his first name. He's from Atlanta.
I
Uh,
don't know any woolly boogers. I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe I know him by his real name.
good friends with Kumbo and
Okay, I
some
probably
of
don't
them
know.
other Bigfooters. I'll think of his name here in a minute, but he was there that
Woolly
night when that
booger.
happened.
I need a
So,
cool nickname like that. Shoot, I guess the Cryptid Huntress kind of sticks there,
oh, yeah.
but Woolly Booger, man, I like that.
Well, that's
I like
like mine,
sounding.
Plowboy. That's my nickname, Plowboy.
Yeah, I love
But
it.
but we had it in 2008. And let me go back to 2008. Before we in 2008 we had an outing up there, and back then I could do an outing. I can't really do them no more. I can carry one or two people at a time now. But used to, we had a big outing up there. We had about 20 people show up. And what we decided to do, uh, we had a guy there that a lot of people know, uh, Jim Grant. A lot of people know him as Dixie Banshee or Bear. He was there. Mr. Tao was there. Mike Mullane. I can't remember who all was there. Pat Rance out of Florida. There's a bunch of us. Uh, we decided that on this particular night, I think it was on Saturday night, that some of them were going to stay at the lake. We were camping at the lake. Some of them were going to stay at the lake, and some of us were going to spread out over the club, and they were going to do calls from the lake. and we were going to be stationed in different places. So that night, me and I had my daughter with me at the time. She was 9 or 10 years old. And I had my sister-in-law, uh, and then her boyfriend, who has had a lot of stuff happen too. Uh, this place, we went and sit at the four-way, the place I spoke about earlier. We were sitting there. Uh, they made some calls from the lake, and we heard responses come back from different places. We were sitting there, and I had those hunter ears on again, and I kept hearing something sound like it was creeping along. You know, you'd hear a little step, then it'd get quiet
Yeah.
a while, then hear a little step.
I've heard that before too. I put on, we had it's like a bionic ear kind of thing. It's the same thing that you had. But we had that before, and I regretted listening through that. I literally regretted it after I did it out in the woods because
Right.
it was so creepy. Because something sounded like it was crawling on the ground towards
Yeah.
me, and
Right.
I couldn't see anything though. There was nothing there. I couldn't find anything,
Right.
but I could hear
It's
it.
great. That thing picks up too good.
It
I know what
does.
you mean. But I kept listening to this, and two, I started getting this odd feeling. You know, I was getting the feeling there was something there with us. So I ended up putting my daughter on in the truck. I done got nervous enough. She went and got put in the truck. She wouldn't have went with me, but she begged to go.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you know, I made sure, you know, she stood right by me wherever I was at. So I ended up putting her in the truck real quick. And at the time, this was a cutover where we were at. It was about 6, 7 foot tall. So you know what a pine cutover looks like when the pines are done about 6, 7 foot. That's what this all looked like right at that time. So we had little radios, and I was talking back to Keith and Mr. Towle. They had went up on top of a hill about a mile from us, and I radioed them, and I said, "Hey, there's something down here by us." I said, "Because I keep hearing something on my hunter ears creeping around, and I got a feeling something's here staring at me." So they said, "Well, we'll come on over where y'all at." We heard those responses, and a couple of them were pretty close to y'all, which they were. One of them was probably within a quarter of a mile of us that answered back. So I happened to see their brake lights on that hill come on because, you know, it was a cutover and you could see across there. And I pointed in that direction to tell my sister-in-law and her boyfriend, there they are. Well, when I pointed and said, there they are, on the back end of my truck, one stands up. I mean, within 10 foot of me.
Wow.
And he's 8 to 9 foot tall. Now, what happens, this is where the freaky part happens. His eyes looked like they were that big around. I call them silver dollars.
Wow.
But they were swirling like the Twilight Zone. If you know that black and white swirl, they were swirling like
hypnotized or something.
Yes.
Like those little.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! There's an emoji that has the swirly eyes. Actually, you can text it to somebody. I've never heard that before.
Well, there's one other person, and I can't remember who told me that she heard on another podcast somewhere or somebody described the same thing one time.
Really?
But I'm sitting.
I've never heard that.
Right. I'm sitting here looking at this. It's looking at me. My sister-in-law was right behind me. She's climbing my back, screaming because she sees it too.
Oh.
Her boyfriend got a glimpse of it. Well, it didn't stand there, but for just a few seconds, it turns and takes off through that cutover. That night, there was a partial moon, so there was some pretty good ambient light that night. It was enough ambient light the moon was putting out that you could see a little bit. When it went through that pine thicket, you could see the pine swaying, you know, when it went through. Well, I'm hollering on the radio to Mr. Towle and Keith, get on down here. They one just stood up behind my truck. And, of course, a few minutes later, they pull up. Mr. Towle gets out, and he said, well, which way did he go, Martin? I said, he went straight up through that cut over there. He said, well, come on. He said, we're going to walk up through there a little bit. He said, he ain't went far. He said, he might stand up for us again, or he might do something to let us know he's there. So we start walking up in there, and you can see where little pine trees and little bushes were just mashed to the ground. And we get up to this spot where nothing growed real well. It's kind of bare ground, and there was his footprints. There was 3 footprints in there. Mr. Towel, we went back the next day and took pictures of them. They were 19 inches long.
Wow.
So that one, that was my second sighting. Let's put it that way. Of course, that first sighting was down in Lowndes County, but this one, that's how close he was to us. And he was a big old boy. Uh, I cannot explain the eyes, though. I do not know if he was trying to put something on me, like
He was
emphasize.
hypnotizing you. That's what he's doing. He's hypnotizing you, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird, and I've brought that up to a lot of people that's had real close up encounters that happened, and most people said, "No, I can't recall that." But somebody, I can't remember who it is, comes in our chat a lot, told me she caught another podcast where somebody said that same thing, that one was real close to him, and when they looked at it, his eyes were doing some weird stuff. So, and it was doing that Twilight Zone like thing. So, I have no idea what that is. Um, like I said, nobody else has ever come forward with anything like that. But so, I mean, Creepy Mountain, we could sit here and talk about it for 8 hours if everybody
Yeah.
went through the thing, and we still wouldn't cover it all. But there's a lot of other people over the years have been up there, had a lot of experiences. Some of the club members have had experiences. We've had people leave the club because of it, particularly 2 women. Uh, there was one lady, her and her husband were members of the club. Uh, they they decided she wanted to hunt in a green field one evening, and in this green field, I'm gonna get to about more what goes on in this one certain green field
Okay.
uh, here in a minute. He went put his wife into that shooting house, and he went on up the road about a mile to hunt another green field. Now field is not far from the 4-way I keep talking about of the club. It's maybe within 3/4 of a mile from it through the woods, if that far. Uh, she's sitting in the shooting house. Her husband's been gone about 20, 30 minutes, maybe something like that. She sees this figure on the other end of the green field moving through the bushes, and all of a sudden this figure turns and comes out into the field and squats down. And she says it's ape looking. It done shook her up. She said it's just squatting looking at her on the other end of the field, looking straight at her. Well, about that time, in behind her, she starts hearing stuff walking in the woods behind her. She calls her husband on the phone and says, "Get down here now. I'm looking at something in the field." He says, "Well, I'll be there as quick as I can." Well, he jumps in his truck and he starts coming that way. Well, when he gets pretty close, she still cannot hear him coming. She's still got her eyes locked in on this, whatever's in this field, looking at her. She pulled the scope up, looked at it, and everything. She said it had a very ape looking face. Wasn't real big. She said maybe 6 foot tall. But as this, and of course, she's hysterical than all this going on. This is later on when I talk to her. She's pretty calm and can talk to me about it. But she said right before her husband pulls up, the one at the end of the field gets up, turns around, walks back in the woods, and the ones behind, whatever was behind her, gets quiet. Well, she quit hunting up there. She said she'd never hunt up there again. A couple of years later, we had another wife and husband in the club. Um, this guy was from down around Montgomery, and real nice gentleman, and he had a camper, and he brought the camper up to the club to stay in it because he would drive up from Montgomery and stay for a few days in his camper and hunt. Well, this particular, let me go back because I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I pulled up one day up on the club, to sign in to go hunting myself, and he's over at his camper, and he comes walking out, and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you a minute." Because at the time I was club president, so any problems always came to me first. I said, "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" And he walked up. He said, "Mark, what's on this hunting club?" I said, "What do you mean, what's on this hunting club?" He said, "What is up here on this hunting club?" He said, "There's something lives up here." And I said, and I looked at him. I said, "You're not going to believe me if I tell you." He said, "Yeah, I will." I said, "Bigfoot." He said, "That's what I thought it was." And I looked at him. I said, "Well, how you know?"
What?
He said, "Well," he said, "I've been all these places I've been hunting on the club. I keep hearing rocks clicking all the time, and I have stuff following me." And he said, "I've had my cabin." He said, "I've had my camper door open a couple of times during the night." He said, "I keep it locked now." He said, "I'd wake up during the night, my camper door would be open."
Ugh.
And what got him really going was one night he was laying there. He just had turned off all the lights, and it was one of those full moon nights, so there was enough ambient light coming in his camper. He watched his silhouette walk right by his camper. And he said, "I thought that's what I'm dealing with." I said, "Yes, sir, that's what you're dealing with." I told him about me and Keith. He said, "That's why y'all come up here late at night, slipping in here and going in places." I said, "Yes, sir. We're going over, sit and listen and stuff like that." So he said, "Well, as long as they ain't bothering me, I ain't going to bother them." He said, "I'm going to keep hunting." He said, "If they was going to do something to me, they done it by now." So he keeps hunting. Well, he brings his wife up one weekend to hunt. And he carries her over to another spot on the club, and she has one of those portable shooting houses. It's kind of like a tent, and you've probably seen them. You can throw them up just real quick.
Mm-hmm.
He
It's
carries
just
her
like a
down to it.
deer blind, right? Like a deer
Yeah,
blind.
right.
Yeah.
But it looks more like a
Camo
little
tent.
tent.
Yeah, it's a camo tent. It's
Right,
like,
there you go.
yeah.
So she carries that with her, and he carries her down this long road. That old road's about a mile long going down into a bottom, and we got a long green patch down there, and most people sit in that road and they watch that green field. Well, he rides her down there on a four wheeler, gets her out, helps her set up the little shooting house. So he's been gone maybe 10 minutes. She's sitting in the shooting house and she hears something walking up. And she thought maybe another hunter. So she hollers out and says, "Who's there?" I'm sitting in the shooting house. Who's there? Well, nobody never answers her. But about that time, she watches part of the shooting house start mashing in.
Oh.
She could moving, coming, like something pushing in on it. Well, she hollers out, "Hey, I'm in here. I'm gonna shoot you if you keep bothering me." Well, about that time, whatever it was, hears it take off running into the bushes. Well, she comes straight on out of there. She's not staying in there. Of course, she's done got shook up. She calls her husband. He's way on the other side of the club by then. She said, "Get back over here. There's something over here with me." He tells her, he said, "Well, start walking up the road, and I'm on the way." So she's walking up the road, and he says, "Stay on the phone with me." So she's telling him, she said, "Whatever it is paralleling me up this road as I'm walking up this road, but I cannot see it." And he tells her, he said, "Well, if it comes towards you or tries to do anything, you shoot it. But if it don't, you just keep going up that road." Well, she finally makes it about to the end of the road where it meets the other road, and she could hear him on the four wheeler coming. And whatever this is, quits following. And she gets on out the road. So he calls me a couple of days later and he tells me, he said, "Hey, Mark, I'm not going to be able to be in y'all's club anymore." He said, and he told me what his wife had happened. And I said, "Well, I can't blame her, He said, "Well, she don't even want me hunting up here no more." And he said, "That got real bold. If that's what that was, I mean, we don't really know if that's what that was or not, but it sounds like it, you know. Because most humans would not go up to do somebody that's sitting in a shooting house. I wouldn't ever do nobody because you get yourself shot,
Pushing your hand in. I mean,
Yeah.
I have some buddies who I have at least one buddy, Terry Wendell out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, Rock Hill Bigfoot. He was in one of those little tent cots, like some people like the tent cots. I do not sleep in a tent cot. That's just a Bigfoot burrito on stilts. Okay, that's what that is.
Right.
But he was in his little. I think he was in a tent cot or like a really small tent, like a 1-man tent or something. And he was investigating a Bigfoot encounter on somebody's property, and a Bigfoot came up and started poking him with its finger in this tent. And I thought, man, that's why I sleep in a big old tent and I put my cot in the middle of it. So it's gonna have to really, really dig in there if it wants to try to touch me. Okay. But that's terrifying. I'd be scared if I were her too, especially, she's just a regular everyday lady that's not a Bigfoot researcher like we are. Imagine how terrifying that would be.
Right. Yes. Yeah. He ended up finishing out that hunting season up there, and he come got his camper. There was another incident when he was there. There was some college boys that we had that were in the club. They were going to school down at Auburn, but we're only like an hour from Auburn. And they had gotten a hunt club with us because they was wanting somewhere pretty close to Auburn to hunt. And they would come up on the weekends. They had them a camper. And one night, we happened to be a friend of mine, Pat Rance. A lot of people in the Bigfoot world know Pat Rance. He's down there in Ocala, Florida.
I drove through Ocala today.
He's a lot of folks know him, but he's also a member of the club. He comes up and hunts, and he's been a member of the club since back in 2009. But a lot of times he comes up and just camps out for a week or two up there too by himself. A lot of time he just be up there by himself. He's had a lot of crazy stuff happen too. Me and him together, and him and Keith and different people. But he happened to be up camping. He come up from Florida. Alabama's his escape from Florida. He said that's his vacation. So to get away from all the rain, humidity, and gators.
It's
and
hot
mosquitoes.
down there.
It is.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, there's mosquitoes in Alabama too, okay, but not as bad in Florida. My car, I got to go wash my car tomorrow, actually, from all the bugs that I hit today. So, yeah.
But one night when this was on a weekend, and Pat was camping out up there, and of course we was up there hanging out with him, and we wasn't having nothing happen there where we was at. It was quiet as it could be that night, and about that time we could hear a truck coming. And you could tell this truck was flying. And then if you ever get to go up there, the roads are rough. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's like, I mean, they're rough. And I looked over at Pat and I said, somebody's going to tear their truck to pieces up here on this mountain. And we're trying to figure out who was coming over there toward us, because you could see the glimpses of the headlights. And we could tell they turned on our road coming down to the lake. And I said, well, they're coming down here with us. Well, about that time, his truck whoops up, and them 4 boys jump out of that truck, and they're going, And we finally get them calmed down. So what's going on? He said, we were sitting up there at our fire. They had a little fire ring. He said, we were sitting there, and he said, I happened to look up, and he said, the pine limbs were parted, and he said, this big head was sitting there looking at us.
Oh, no.
He said, that's what y'all doing up here at night, is looking for them things. So they didn't believe it. They used to make fun of it, and they finally got their own glimpse. And them boys quit coming up there camping at night. They would come hunt during the day, but they would not come up there and camp on that club at night time.
And they had to get new shocks for their vehicle and new tires, probably.
They about tore that truck coming up over there, and it was about the next year they quit hunting up there. I think they went and found them a different club. And then so that's and there's tons of other stuff. There's stuff happening all around off Creepy Mountain on private land. I got a good friend. I know he won't mind me saying his first name, but his name's David. He lives on the west side of Creepy Mountain. They come up around his house a lot at night. He hears, vocals all the time. So he has them coming up over there. His wife has seen one over there in their backyard. He's got glimpses of one. Another friend of ours was there the other night that heard some vocals, and in fact, he caught them vocals on some audio. So, and then around other areas, when I was years ago, I was living on the south side of the mountain. I'm on the east side of it now, but I was living on the south side. Well, during this feeding time, when me and Keith was feeding them, uh, and this is how my sister-in-law got into this. The one I mentioned that was with me when that one stood up behind the truck. She was babysitting for me and my first wife, I guess you say. She was babysitting for us. Uh, I was working third shift. My wife then was out on a business trip. And about 11 o'clock, I get a phone call from my sister in law. And the first thing she says, "Why is there a bunch of apes in your backyard for?" I said,
Oh,
"What?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "It sounds like the Birmingham Zoo in your backyard right now." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "That's them Bigfoot things you fooling with." I mean, that's the way she said it. Because her and her sister had been talking. She said, "That's them." She said, "They here at your house, Mark." She said, "That's what's out there screaming and hollering in your backyard." And she puts the phone out the door, and yeah, I can hear it. I mean, you can hear, ha, 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 I mean, all this going on. And she's kind of nervous. And I said, "Well, where's my dogs at?" She said, "Well, they're up on the porch, up against the porch, far as they can get." I said, "Where's my horses at?" She said, "Well, hold on a minute." She done flipped on all the floodlights, and she goes to my kitchen and she looks out my kitchen window. She said, "Well, they're out by the gate with their butts up against the gate, looking out where all that sound is coming from." So them
oh,
horses,
oh.
so my horses had done got up closer to the house they could, and my dogs, which were hunting dogs, they done piled up on the porch and got up against the wall and wouldn't move. And I told her, I said, "Well," I said, "do I need to come home?" She said, "No." Uh, she said, "I just didn't know what was going on." She said, "All of a sudden, all this carrying on went to going on." So they had started visiting my house. I did not know it.
That was
And
the first time? Was that the first time that happened?
that's the first time we know of. I think they had been there before, and I just didn't know it. After that is when stuff started happening around my house, uh, just kind of like it does here where we live at now. In another place I lived for a little while. But I had a 16-foot trailer, one of those trailers that you haul like a car or a tractor on or something.
Mhm.
I kept finding it being moved all the time. It would be rolled around into a different spot. Um, I couldn't pick up that trailer and move it real easy. I mean, it'd take me some strength. I'd have to really bow up, and you still wouldn't move it far. That was happening. I started finding, and I know it's going to gross people out, but I started finding these squirrels hanging on my gate at my pasture. Their backs would be broken, but the squirrel would be draped. Them squirrels were not falling out of a tree, breaking their back on that gate. This was being put there like a gift. Uh, the flowers showed up there, the rock piles. My daughter would go out in the yard and find little rocks and bring them to me, and it'd be pretty little quartz rocks. And down there where we lived, down in there, I didn't have no quartz rocks, but there was quartz up on the mountain. And so they were bringing, and that's how I knew too. Found out later they'd been coming to my watermelon patch and all that. And some of the neighbors were having stuff going on. There was a neighbor that lived up behind me about a half a mile away. I stopped one day at a service station, and she happened to be putting fuel in her car, and she's a law enforcement. And I was talking to her. I said, "How you doing?" She said, "Pretty good." She said, "Oh, I want to ask you about something." She said, "You know anything about a peeping tom in our neighborhood?" I said,
Oh, God.
"No peeping tom." She said, "Well," and this is a tough lady. I mean, she told me, she said, well, a lot of nights I come home from work, and her husband worked third shift, so he'd be done left work before she got home from work. And she said, I'm coming home at night, and I'm getting home, and she said, I'll catch a peeping Tom looking at me through my kitchen window, but when I go out, it's gone. And she said, I don't know who living around here is doing that. They're going to get themselves shot. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm saying, and her house, her property bordered Creepy Mountain. You had to come through her property and another little piece of property to get to my place. So I'm sitting here thinking, man, there'd be somebody crazy be peeping Tom down here around us because everybody hunt, shoots guns all the time, everything. So I asked her, I said, you mind if I ride over one day and look around? She said, no, I don't mind you coming over looking around. So one evening I went over and I just walk around the house and I happened to get there at the kitchen. I said, is that the window that the peeping Tom's looking in at you at? She said, yeah. I said, that's one tall fella looking in at the house at you. And she said, you're right. He'd have to be 8, 9 foot tall or he's bringing a ladder with him. I said, I just looked at her and I said, I don't think that's a man looking at you. And there was a holler come off the hunting club into her backyard because they had built their house pretty close to the line of the club, and they had more front property because they had horses too. And so some could come right out of that holler and walk right there to her kitchen window. But her kitchen window was above my head. From the ground to the bottom of her window sill was above my head. I'm 6'1". For this to be looking straight in at the window had to be in the 8 foot range. So
That's
I
why
did not.
I always say it's important to have curtains and blinds if you live
Yeah,
out in the country. Okay. If you don't want things looking in your window, even on the second story, third story, put windows and put curtains and blinds up if you don't want Bigfoots looking at you at night.
right.
In the bathroom, too. Wait, was that Flat Rock? I had Flat Rock on the show a few weeks ago. And he was telling us about how he looked out the window and he was on the toilet, I think. He was in his bathroom and they were looking at his window at him.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That ain't the first time I've heard it a bunch of people. That I did not come out and tell that lady that was Bigfoot because I didn't know how she would take it.
Oh no.
I just I said, well, I said, has he come back lately? She said, no, I ain't seen him lately. And I said, well, if you do, let me know. I said, I'll come back up here. She said, well, I don't. She said, I ain't got to have you come back up here. I said, well, I'd like to, if you don't mind, let me know. But never did really hear nothing else out of her. Some of the other neighbors talked about hearing stuff at night and having stuff up around their house. Not nothing real major, but uh, some across the highway over on the creek bottom. About across from where I live was a big creek bottom. In fact, Cedar Creek, that's where our farm name comes from. Because I pretty much grew up on that creek, and my grandfather owned land on that creek at one time. And then Rebecca grew up in Cedartown, Georgia, with Cedar Creek, so that name just went together, real easy. So, but so that's some of the stuff. I mean, of course, I ain't even scratched the surface. That's some of the stuff that's went on with Creepy Mountain. One thing I was going to tell you about, we'll go back to that number 4 field where that lady had that and it come out and squatted on her
Oh
in the
yeah.
field. There was a portal popped up in that field with some other Bigfoot researchers. I was standing in the road with a lady who did not want to get out of her vehicle. She done got that terrified. So I stayed out in the road, but 4 other people went into that field and they said a portal opened up on the other end of the field. It looked like it was bluish color and it looked like water churning in it. When it
Wow.
opened up, this figure come forward, but it's like the figure seen them and backed up and the portal closed back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was There was 4 people in the field. 3 of them seen it. The other one was looking the other way with a thermal when it happened, but they said it happened so quick. It just opened up. They seen this figure come forward. The figure, like it seen them, backed up, and that thing just shut. And that area in there has always had a weird feeling to it in there. Uh, so, uh, so that's one of the portals that's popped up there.
I'll be. Well, my team's got experience with the portals.
Right.
We've had at least 2, and you know what? I was actually going to dedicate the show tonight to Tim, my buddy Tim. It's been 5 years today since he passed away, and he is one of our teammates, a very good friend of mine, who went into that portal, and he and Grumpy both have passed away since they entered that portal. They didn't know they were entering a portal; they couldn't see it. They were guided over to it, and they both got really sick after that. So,
Well,
it's dangerous.
well, let me say this too. I wasn't really going to bring this up on that part, but them 3 of those got sick too. All
Really?
had stomach cancer.
Really?
Yeah, they're all still living though. They made it through their treatments, but all 3. One of them was from Texas. Did not live here in Alabama. The one with the thermal never got sick or had any problems. That's Pat Rance. But the other 3 ended up having stomach cancer, which is very strange that one person was all the way from Texas.
Yeah.
So, some oddities, something there about that.
Well,
Very odd.
I'm not going to get into detail, but there are other members of the team that were there that night that have gotten forms of cancer as well, things like that. So, it's worth looking into. And I know we do take, radiation measurements when we're out there. We do like a baseline reading in the morning and then throughout the day. And that's at the meadow. I'm talking about the meadow. And whenever there's something paranormal that happens, or, even like the portal, we take Geiger meter, readings and things like that. And there is a spike of radiation. So there's radiation involved in this,
Right.
even though it might be a little bit, or it could be a lot. Just depends.
Right. Well, there at Hollands, and she was in the chat here. I don't know if Katie's still in here or not. She was in here earlier. Back when we had that little outing back in 1st of June down there. Katie happened to be looking off down through part of the campground, and she could see the air shimmering.
Oh.
And in fact, a couple other people seen it too, I think. But she said the air was shimmering, like, you know how you can see the steam shimmering off the pavement during the summer.
Yes.
You know what I'm kind of saying? You know how you
almost
can
like
see
the Predator or something like that. It's like a liquid form of something, or it's just, I
she
call it a
went.
disturbance in the atmosphere. That's what I call it.
Well, she witnessed that there at Hollands on one of those days.
Wow.
I do not think it was heat because it was not real hot during that period. In fact, it was raining a lot during that period. The weather was very mild during that outing, and of course she got uh, a little orb or something on camera. She got it, a little green thing floating around amongst them while they were sitting there talking there at Hollands. So there was definitely some times down there at Hollands that it feels weird. Just like on Creepy Mountain, there's times I've been up there that I'm ready to go. When I get there, it's just like, hey, I don't need to be up here. And I mean, I've only gave you a few instances of some stuff that went on up there. There's tons and tons of it. Other club members have seen stuff or have heard vocals. We've had a lot of deer disappear. People, harvest the deer, go to get it, and the deer will be gone. No blood trail. Views dogs. Um, try to track the deer. Dog stop, can't track it. One guy, and we really weren't even talking about Bigfoot, just pops up one day talking about he'd found a boneyard on a hunt club in one of the deep hollers. He said it was full of deer bones, cow bones, dog bones, and he told me the location. Uh, I, Me and Keith went into that location, and it's a pretty good walk in there to it. It's up back in a back deep holler. Not much sun gets in there. A lot of the mountain laurels in there and stuff. It's a real thick place. And when we got in there, we found some bones, not what he described, but it would have been, he had talked about that was last year when he found that. So we went in there like a year later. There were still bones in there. This spot is not a spot that a hunter would carry his carcass to after he cleaned it. This is not a place a farmer would drag a cow to. This is a spot that was hard to get in. It was down a bluff in there to it. And then we had another hunter one day. We used to run deer dogs up there too. And he was one of the dog handlers. And his dogs went down another big bluff in there. And he was walking down through there around the rim of it. And we got a lot of rock outcrops, sticking out. And he went up under one. And he said there was bones all up in there, piled up in there, neatly. Like he said, it wasn't like scattered. He said it's like something sit there and put a nice little pile of bones there. So,
Wow.
and I never did go check that spot out. I should have, and I know where it's at now. I could go to it. It's a pretty good little walk in there to it. And, this time of year, I wouldn't want to go in there because of the rattlesnakes, but that place up there eat up with rattlesnakes. But so there's more stuff that's just oddities. It's just a ton of different oddities up there on that place.
Well, I know from just me doing some research out there in the Talladega forest and around that part of Alabama, lots of high strangeness, and lots of high strangeness. And not only do we have to worry about the high strangeness, we worry about the feral. It could be even feral people out there too, stuff like that. I'm concerned about the missing people the most, though. That's my main concern about that part of Alabama.
Well, like I said, I think there's two that I can recall that's missing from the Sylacauga end. Now you get up toward Cheehaw and up toward Chockalaka. I'm not sure. And I think David Pilates has a few listed from Talladega National Forest in one of his books, I think.
He does. You know what? I might actually have the map actually of the missing people. Here we go. This is an old map right here. But there's definitely, let's see. I gotta zoom in on this on mine. There's definitely a cluster in Alabama at the Talladega Forest. There's a couple of arrows right there.
Yeah.
So
that
was in 2012. And the Bankhead Forest. Yeah, Bankhead is another spot, man. I've had some weird experiences out at Bankhead too myself, actually. So
yeah, that's an old forest. Bankhead is. A lot of it never has been cut for timber, and they got a lot of deep hollers in there. There's some old big trees in there. That's an old forest. A lot of it hadn't been cut. Talladega National Forest, a lot of it's been cut before, but they're both real big forest, beautiful forest, and they're loaded with boogers. There's no doubt they're there. There's just too many reports I've heard other people talk about. People live out in there talking about what they hear at night, what they see, and of course what you're just talking about. There's one spot they call Cemetery Mountain in the Talladega National Forest. It's down toward the Talladega side. They say there's an old church out in the woods out there on a man's property they called it a Satanist church. They said there was a Satan Bible on the pulpit in there. People went in there and they said it's there. The man ended up putting up no trespassing signs and stuff. But I heard if you went and talked to him real nice, if he's still living, he'd let you walk in there. I don't know if I'd want to walk out there or not.
I don't know. Well, remember I told you earlier. I was mentioning about the FOIA request about that that guy who had died out there that got shot, and in that request, they did mention that there were cults out there
Yeah.
that were practicing witchcraft.
Right.
So it could be that. I mean, that's where a lot, there's a lot of high strangeness at places where people do satanic rituals and stuff, and including up in not too far from where your wife's from, up in Tryon, actually, north of Cedartown. There's Corpsewood Manor is up there, and that they call that Devil Worshippers Mountain. There's a lot of reports of Bigfoots up there, and even dogmen or werewolves, as they call them, up that way.
Yeah, I've heard that, and down south of me, going toward Auburn, um, I have a friend that has the Alabama Ghost Hunters. Faith Seth is her name.
Mm-hmm.
You may know her. She does a lot with the Columbus area, but she told me that down in that area right below Auburn, in the Salem Beauregard area, there's a lot of the occult stuff down in there, and I think it's all up and down the Alabama Georgia line. A lot of it right there, and a lot of woods, a lot of timberland, easy to get into. Um, and right now, I'm dealing with a guy that's got boogers and dogmen on his property. And where the spot is, it's just crazy. You wouldn't think something would be there like that. But also, there's other oddities going on, and I think I asked him. I said, somebody in your neighborhood's got to be playing with the occult for all this stuff to be going on with lights, and they've had some people get shot out there and stabbed, and I'm going like, man, there's just something going on in your area. And I took a dogman report from that area before he even contacted me. That's the first dogman report I ever took. And it kind of blew my mind when that popped up, because that's something I wasn't really used to. You know, like I said, at first I thought there was a lot of hype being put on dogmen, but I'm hearing from too many credible people about that. And then when this guy contacts me about what he saw, and then a year later, this other guy contacts me, and then I got a picture, the one I sent to you, of something over that patch, and that just kind of blew my mind.
Let's see. Let's show the picture, actually. Let me pull that up. I think it's this one right here.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Now, did you say this is on your property?
Yeah, that was my corn patch back in 2022. That corn there, a lot of that corn there is 12 foot tall, some of it. Some of them stalks, because it's Jimmy Red corn. It's a field corn. But that was part of my watermelon patch there in front. You can see whatever that is pretty good. The one to the left with the weird looking head. It looks like a bucket on its head. That middle area is pointing to another figure that you can see there, the black outline. But the one that nobody has ever really noticed is all the way over on the right. You can see the black figure with the ears and the snout. If you blow that up, look at it, it almost looks like a cartoon character, but they're weird. And I got this. I was making one of my videos about the watermelons, and I was just talking. I never knew these things were standing that close to me. There's more pictures. I didn't send them all to you. But I mean, people found these in there for me. I did not find these in the videos. I had other people who watched the video, and they contacted me and said, Mark, you had something right beside you in your corn patch. Now, this one here, whatever that is, that's a big boy. That's all I'm going to say, because that corn right in there where he's at is in that 10 to 12 foot mark, and you see where he's at. That's a big old whatever. That's a big whatever it is.
Oh my gosh, that's huge.
Yeah, and you look, if you can see its face, you can pull it up a little bit. That thing has got I don't know what that is. I do not know what that is. I mean, I'm assuming it's a booger, but that's one of the ugliest faces I've ever seen on something.
Oh God.
I mean, it's like it's got ribs in its face. I never knew that stuff was there. I had a lady contact me, uh, and she just happened to catch the motion when I would turn. She caught that. Then another lady, blue eyed, she was in here earlier. She caught some of those for me too.
That's
They
bad.
went and how they caught this. They got a glimpse, so they went and slowed my video down real slow, and they went to the time marks. And this video is still up. It's from it's called the Cornfield back in August of 2022. Uh, you can review it, and if you'll slow it down when you get in about the 25-minute range, if you'll slow your computer down or put it on a TV, you can see when I scan around, they're standing there. And there's more there than just them. There's a little one in there too with a dog head on it. It's a little bitty dog looking thing, and it's standing up. But there is, yeah, that right there freaks me out too. I mean, I don't know what's going on there with that, but that head, I don't know what to say about that. Yeah, there's one of the marks right there at 2025. So 25 minutes and 25 seconds is where that got caught. And that big black one is back there in the background. He's in that picture too. That's him in the back there. So, I mean, I don't know. People can say what they want to say, but that's some crazy stuff right there.
It is. Well, you know where they're coming from. They're hiding out in your cornfield.
Yeah.
And that's where that's a good vantage point apparently to watch you guys.
Right. And I found footprints here. I sent you a couple of them.
You did. Let's see here.
Yeah, that one was right out there by my shop. That measured 18 inches. You can see his heel. And then you can see, and that was the only track, Eric, because where he stepped at was a little soft area. The rest of it's hard ground. We had noticed we got an outside cat that we feed outside. He's a yard cat. We noticed he was going through a lot of feed. I know that cat wasn't eating all that feed. Now, I, of course, have coons and other stuff that come up, but that track is leaving from where that cat, where we feed that cat under a shed, going right toward my garbage can. And my garbage can is up by where my camper is. I should have put a picture of all that, but uh, uh, yeah, there's one. You can see it's curved a little bit. It's kind of weird there. But at first, I almost stepped in it. I was going out to feed animals, and I almost stepped right in the middle of it. And I happened to look down, and I said, "Wait a minute! I'm looking at a footprint." And I took a lot of pictures. I think I just sent you one or two of them, but you can see what I'm looking at right there. That's up on Creepy Mountain, and that's what some of the terrain looks like up on Creepy Mountain. Of course, a lot of it's been clear cut and it's back up in pines. That there was very strange the day I come by it. Could nature do that? Of course it could. I'm not going to say it couldn't, but there's more to that picture than what you're seeing. Right up above that picture, there's a tree bent over. There's no way those two limbs, those two pine limbs, and that hardwood one is bent, and it is stuck in the ground over here. I mean, it is stuck down in the ground. And those two pine limbs are laying just like that. And there's no way they could have fell out of them pines and fell like that because there's another tree leaning over all that. I should have sent you more pictures of that would show that area better.
I mean, that's pretty cool right there, Mark. That's a cool capture right there.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people they're not trained in what to look for. They'd walk right past that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even think anything about it. But there's definitely something to it.
Yeah, there's something to that. And also there was a video I done in that area. I guess I should have sent you the picture of it, but there's actually a black figure in the background of one of the videos. He ain't there, but for a second or two, you can see him peep out from behind a tree, then go back behind the tree. but it's just a black figure, so I can't say it's a Bigfoot. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely was something there that peeped up, looked at me, and then peeped, went back down. Um, that was right there, close to that right there. I had a ton of tree bows I could have sent you, but I mean, everybody's seen tree bows. I thought that was pretty unique because I had never seen something like that. Uh, Not exactly like that. I've seen tons of the X's, tree bows, stuff woven together, but that one really caught my eye right there that day I found that. That was just real weird. I don't know. I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know what that even might even symbolize, but
Well, some of the things that we found out in the woods before are where they put sticks, they lean sticks up against a tree stump or a tree that's fallen.
right,
And my buddy, my good buddy David Pardue, he's up in North Carolina. He researches out of URI mostly, but he's found those before, and he said that that's actually, and this is not the same really as that, but when they put the sticks up against that tree, a lot of times it's showing. He believes they're showing you how many are in the clan there, or their pod, or whatever you want to call it, their family. It's like the number of them that are there, but that's something that's kind of new, looking like that. I mean, I've seen a lot of these what I call the asterisks
right, right.
designs like that, and that kind of looks like an asterisk. But a lot of times, the trees when they're bent over and they're arched over, they're they're being held down by like a bunch of other sticks, and th're kind of in that star formation, just like that.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I call a star for me. And when I
yeah,
done my video, I said it looks like a star.
yeah.
But those two pine limbs, there's no way. I mean, they would have to fall just right and fall through a bunch of other stuff to land just like that, perfect. And I even intentionally moved some of that later on, and it got put back like it was like it right there. So something's dealing with it.
Huh.
And that's close to these other areas where a lot of stuff's went on. There's like a mile and a half circle up there on the club where probably 80% of the stuff has always happened.
Yeah.
Where the bulk of it happened, but where people seen stuff, and it seems like that area was where most of the activity is. I mean, of course, there's other parts of the club where stuff happens, and um, these like the corn patch. I'm not. I don't know if them are coming off Creepy Mountain or if they're coming from north of me. I've got a lot of land, a lot of woods, farmland north of me, and there's some booger reports from up in there, about 4 or 5 miles north of me. It could be them coming because they got plenty of ways to get in here where I'm at. Even though I live right by a major highway, there's drains going under that highway that I can walk through. And me and Keith, actually, my friend Keith lives on Creepy Mountain. His property borders it. And right there where he lives at, there's a big holler that comes off a club where there's a pipe going under the highway that's big enough for me and him to walk under. And we went and checked that out one time and we found footprints going in there. And it comes out in a guy's pasture on the other side of the highway that has goats. And I asked Keith here a while back to find out if that guy had any goats going missing. Because it'd be very easy for something to come right out of that tunnel, get in that pasture and grab something and go with it. So,
Fast food. That's Bigfoot fast food.
and Keith's had them there at his house. He's got pictures of stuff up on his porch. In fact, he got a picture of, I think, of a little one about 3 foot tall. And in the
Oh,
background, you can see what looks like maybe the mama stooping over looking. Now, she looks huge. He had a camera on his front porch, and because he had some chickens going missing and stuff, and he started paying attention, and then he caught that on camera one night. Uh, but it looks like one maybe about 3 foot tall, looking right at the camera.
Really?
Ooh, you know. Then Mama looks like Mama standing right back there behind it.
She's like, get out of that camera. There's
Yeah.
infrared. We see it.
And he's
Yeah.
found footprints there around his place. And he's heard them vocalize up behind his house, and he only lives a mile from me, so that tells you something. You know, that's how, uh, you know, so that's how close we are to, how close I am to Creepy Mountain, and uh, got a lot of creeks around me. Right north of me is a big old creek that comes out of the national forest, and there's people have seen stuff on it before. So there's a lot going on in this area. This is a high activity area. A lot of reports from there. And then the
It
county
does.
south of me, which is Coosa County, very rural county. Ton of reports from down there too. I've worked a bunch of people's properties down there where they've seen them in their pastures. People have seen them in creeks, crossing the road. And down there's where two very good reports that I took come from down there, which both reports ain't that far from me by the way the crow flies. Both of these dealt with hunters, kind of like me. They seen their first boogers hunting like I did. Um, One guy was in a tree stand. After dark, he come out of the tree stand. He heard something behind him. As soon as he put his last foot on the ground off the rung of the ladder, he heard something behind him. Turned around and this big figure standing there looking at him. Freaked him out. And then another guy on the opposite end of the county had basically the same thing happen a few years later. Had one approach him in the tree stand after he got out of the. Now that goes back to Hollands, where the guy was found right there at his tree stand. So
Do you want to tell the audience about that? I don't think we even got into that really, did we? With
I
the
went
with
down
the
into
hunter? I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that tonight or not. Can
yeah,
we
yeah,
can we go over that a little bit?
yeah. Anything you want to
Okay.
talk about, do with
I
me.
definitely want to talk about that because that's why I was thinking about it when I got home that night after I left y'all out at Hollands, and I got home. It was like almost 2 in the morning, and I didn't want to call or text because it was so late.
Right,
Well, it was 2 o'clock Georgia time. Okay,
right,
y'all are an hour behind me
right.
as far as time zone. But I waited till the next day to contact y'all. But I was kind of worried because I was like, man, that sound as the crow flies. It couldn't have been more than a couple of miles from where the camp was.
Right,
Where I
Yeah, it
saw those things.
went far. Well,
Yeah.
my understanding is, and I most of the information I got was from another Bigfoot researcher that brought it to my attention, and then he at one time talked about it some on his channel. Um, he got to be real good friends with a lot of the forest rangers and game wardens, and they knew what he was doing. They knew he was researching Bigfoot, and they were giving him some information. Uh, he One of the older game wardens that was fixing to retire was telling him about a guy that had been found there close to that campground right above it back in the 80s that had been torn apart. And of course, that got his attention. And he started researching it, and he was able to pull what he called the coroner's report or sheriff's report. I actually read it. I had it in my hand. If it was a real one, that's all I'm gonna say. Because I don't know, but he was ex law enforcement, so he may have had a way to be able to get that. Um, I read it, and of course, what it said on there was death by unknown animal. That's what it said. It said one arm was torn off, his back leg was broke backwards. If you get what I'm saying, in other words, something grabbed it from the back and pulled and broke it, and then his body was in a twisted position, like you would take and wring out a wash rag. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no bite marks, but there was heavy bruising, but there wasn't no bite marks. And of course, coroner's report says death by unknown animal. Now, my understanding is what happened was this guy went there to hunt. He didn't show up at home. His family got worried, so they called the law, and I think who they called was actually they called the Clay County Sheriff's Department. And of course, they probably contacted the game wardens and everything since it was on the management area. And they came in there, and his brother happened to come down there because his brother knew about where he hunted. Now, this would be in the Talladega National Forest, I think, in the early '80s, where this happened at. They went up there, and they found him because his brother, like I said, his brother knew about where he hunted at, and they found him. That's how they found him. So, and that's what the story was, and that something got a hold of him up there. Of course, with a bear, we would know there'd been bite marks, probably claw marks, or a panther, or any of that type. Of course, a bear would probably have the strength to rip a man's arm off and stuff, But there were no bite marks, so that kind of throws, that type of animal out of the equation, maybe. So we knowing that there's boogers and other things there in that area. That's kind of how everything went was, hey, that's probably what got him. Now, with me talking to some of the locals later down the road, there's a gentleman that lives down in that area, and he's in his 80s. He's hunted that property in there. He's lived down there all his life, knows about everybody down there. And he shows up when we have these outings. He'll come sit with us for a while during the day. And I just asked him one day, I said, hey, I said, what you know about this guy that they found passed away up in here back in the 80s? I said, you remember that? He said, oh, yeah. He said, game warden said he had a heart attack. I'm going, heart attack?
Oh.
I said, that don't make sense. I said, they didn't say nothing about him being tore up, like something got a hold of him. He said, no, they said a heart attack. That's why, let me ask you this. I said, do they find a lot of people out here? He said, oh, yeah, all the time. He said, most of them drug overdoses. And I'm saying, drug overdose? He said, well, yeah, they'll find them in their car dead, or they'll find them laying on the ground dead, or I'm going like, that just don't make sense. But then I asked him about the tents in the campground. I said, you ever see any, tents left down here? He said, yeah. He said, there's tents get left down here a lot of times. He said, several of them with all the stuff with them. So he said there was one before this one that was left with all the stuff. And so I don't know, there's some weird stuff there. There's some other places they've found some people deceased, up on. I think I know what you're talking about, Duty Bird. I think I know. I know what you're talking about. There's somebody else that knows good about that. Yeah, I was down there around Lowndes County, where I seen my first booger at the same area. I didn't mean to get off subject, but I caught that right there a minute. But
no, I want to read it out loud because we're on podcast as well, so people can't see the screen. So I'm going to read this. Duty Bird says, back in the 70s, there was a man that got shredded close to the Alabama River. So that's what we're talking about. Mark, I wanted to say something too about that in reference to the drug overdoses. Okay, because I had done an investigation out at a state park out by where the Georgia Guidestones used to be. Okay, and I took a part of my team. We went and did a little scout weekend because the park ranger had contacted me and said they had like 9 Bigfoot sightings out there in a month. And so we went and he showed us around. I mean, he guided us. He took us gave us a tour of the entire park where every single Bigfoot sighting had been at this park. And he was very credible. I'd been talking with him on the phone for a while, FaceTiming him. And he said there had been a death related to a Bigfoot. And that's what got us out there. And he even took us to the cabin where the man had died. And I sat on the bed. I mean, we went inside the cabin because the story went that he had, it was an elderly gentleman and his wife. The gentleman had claimed he had seen like a Bigfoot or something on the property earlier in the day, and the wife, I don't think the wife believed him. And then that night, a Bigfoot had looked in the window and he had a heart attack. He screamed and had a heart attack and he died. And that was the story. That's what I was told. I had no reason not to believe it. You know what I mean? It was, we went out looking for Bigfoot sign and everything around that cabin and trying to get a good, I mean, we thoroughly investigated this, right? And then one of our teammates, a friend of mine, is a emergency room nurse. She knows the coroner. And when she asked the coroner about what happened out there after we had investigated this, he said, well, that wasn't actually an old man that died. That was a young woman who had a drug overdose, is what he said. And so it was just weird. You know what I mean? That's just weird that the story completely changed. And
Right. Well, that's, I
it
mean,
didn't
yeah,
make sense.
well, that's kind of what floored me was, that gentleman said, "Oh no, he died of a heart attack." And I said, "Well, who told you that?" And he said, "Well, a game ward, one of the older game wards." I'm going like, I'm not, so I'm up in the air. So I did ask a friend of mine that was in law enforcement. I said, "How easy is it to get records from back in the '80s?" I said, "Is it pretty easy?" They said, "No, not really." I said, "Because a lot of that stuff has not been put on computer; it's still in paperwork form."
Mm-hmm.
And said they're going to have to go look for it. And a
Full,
lot of
yeah.
them don't go look for it. They got to dig through tons of stuff to find it. And he said they probably, if they wrote that off, I mean, the file is going to be there, but they're not going to look for it. They just because they don't have the time. And I said, well, I wonder how this other guy researcher was able to get that. And he said, well, if he, was prior law enforcement, they may have let him go look for it, or he may have had some kind of clearance where he could really get in there and look. I don't know, So that's why I always say I don't know if I was looking at something that was a real document or not. I'm not going to say it wasn't. I ain't going to say it was. I just don't know, and
Mm-hmm.
But there's some oddities there with that. And
Yeah.
if you go to noticing with all this stuff, it seems always some crazy oddiness, like the LBL stuff or the Taylor, Mississippi stuff or what you was just talking about and this here and some other places. There's always some crazy, odd stuff with it.
Yeah.
You know,
The stories don't line up. And
right?
and it's not like we're sent on a wild goose chase and
Yeah,
everybody's pointing fingers at each other. And it's like that's how I feel when I do some of these investigations. It's like, no, wait, it wasn't an old man, it was a young girl.
right.
And she died of a drug overdose. And we often find, I personally have not found one, but guys on my team have found abandoned campsites and tents and stuff, and out at the places where we go bigfooting up in North Georgia.
Right.
It's been common over the years to find that where people, we know that's where like there's like alpha Bigfoots and stuff, and they screamed the guys out of the woods in the past, and so we figured that's what happened to those people. We just figured that, we never found
Well,
any IDs and stuff like, but
they've found more stuff up toward Cheehaw, up at
mm-hmm.
Chockalocka. They found a lot of
Yeah.
abandoned tents in those areas, backpacks. Maybe the person got tired of toting a backpack. I don't know. There's some, you hear rumors and stuff, but if you can't ever really talk to the person that had the real, because how like it is, so and so, so and so, and before you know it, it's exaggerated, and you don't know where the real truth is. But Down at but I'm gonna tell you my opinion. I think at Hollands that really happened. I think that guy was um, took out by something. I wondered if he was maybe pointed a gun at something and that took it as a threatening, and it come over and got a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
because his gun was not discharged. That was the other thing. They said his gun was loaded, laying over by him, but was never discharged. It's almost like if whatever got a hold of him ambushed him when he got out of that tree stand. That's why I mentioned those other two guys in Coosa County talking about as soon as their foot hit the ground off the tree stand, there was something right there behind them. When they turned around, there was this big black figure, and one of them said he stopped and even asked it, or he said, "Look, I got a rifle. I don't want to shoot you," but he said, I don't want no trouble with you. And it went, oh, turned around, walked off. So, and he took off the other way running. But so it understood him. I think it understood what he was saying. So this guy Hollands done something that ticked it off, and when he got on the ground, it come and got him.
Yeah.
And if you ever get to come back, I'll carry you exact to the same. We know where the spot is. We know where and in the place the guy was hunting, he had picked a good spot because he had a very good view of everything around him. For he had, so whatever it was, if it was that close to him, it was that good at sneaking up, without him seeing it. So, and it may have been there when he come out of the tree and he couldn't do nothing. I don't know, but it's just crazy, just crazy.
It's pretty wild. And I was thinking when you were talking about how his body was twisted up. I think it was Eric from Media Palace. I'm pretty sure someone who's been on my show before. He had, I believe it was him. Someone has shown me some pictures of like a coyote or some kind of animal. I think it was a coyote, but it had been kind of like, this is kind of gross, right? But its body had been twisted up like that and tied in a knot. And it was either a Bigfoot or a Dogman. They believe that did this. It was something that was almost like the skin had been turned inside out and then twisted up and tied in a knot is what it was.
I think Greg House, I might be quoting this wrong, but I think Greg and them found a coyote up there on his property one time, all twisted up. But I'll have to ask Greg to make sure about that. I might be thinking about somebody, but I think it was Greg. But I'll tell you this: a few times up on Creepy Mountain, when we've harvested deer before, a lot of times they'd be already wounded, and I'm not talking about from a rifle shot. It's like something got a hold of. We've harvested some before it only had 3 legs on, and when the guy went and done and dressed the deer, he said the bone was broke off, like on a back leg or a front leg or something. So, like something grabbed it and broke his leg or something. So, I mean, which I know getting hit by a car or something could also do that. Could break a leg or something. But I mean, that's just kind of weird. Now, I'll tell you something. This is crazy. I'll tell you this real quick. We were all hunting one day, and we had gathered up at a spot to meet where we could get ready for our next hunt. And we had a deer run up in there with us with a bunch of humans now. It would not leave us. We was all like, what in the world? And it kept looking back at the woods. That deer would not leave us. And then finally, it took off and went down the road the opposite way it came. But it stood in there with us for 10 minutes. I mean, within 5 foot. But it wasn't paying us no attention. It kept looking up the woods. Now, what was after that deer? It was something spooked that deer bad enough. It come to humans for protection. And
wow.
I mean, and I know there's other people. I can back that up real good. There's a bunch of witnesses that there's about 20 of us standing there. And I mean, that just floored our mind that day. That deer run up in there with us and just stood there with us. And we're all like, what in the world's going on here? And I've heard of that before, of other people talking about deer or other animals coming up to where they're at, wanting to hang out with them and be, like something's after them, and they're hanging out with the humans, And I mean,
they're trying to blend in with the humans. They're just like,
yeah. So I mean, I mean, it's crazy, but I mean that happened that day, and I mean I'll never forget that. That was the strangest thing
Wow.
I have ever seen in my life. You know.
That's wild. I wanted to go back to this comment too from Duty Bird. Duty Bird, I like your name, Duty Bird. Okay. It says also somewhere around the early 80s, they found a man completely drained of blood close to the dam. They claimed he was drunk and mosquitoes did that to him. Shaking my head. Nah.
Now I wonder which dam
Wow.
Duty Bird is talking about.
Let's see. Okay. She said, I think it's a she. It's either she or he. She said it's a Duty Bird's a girls raised in the South, right? I saw that comment earlier. So, Duty Bird says they found his car off the road and he was inside the woods, dead and drained. That sounds like a vampire kind of thing or ET thing. We know there's a lot of UFOs out there in Alabama, but that's
Well,
weird.
I just wonder where that's at because oh, okay, I got you now. I got you down there around Perry Creek. That's not far from where I had my sighting, my first Bigfoot
Oh,
sighting. That Perry Creek, uh, where had my first sighting, was the Lowndes County Wildlife Management Area, which is right across the river from Selma, Alabama. Selma, Alabama is a very, very old southern town. It was settled by the French like back in the 1700s before Alabama was even a state. It's a weird part of Alabama, beautiful area, but it's very old, very weird, a weird place. Uh, I
is
heard
it near?
there's a
Is it near the Mobile? I don't mean to interrupt you. Is it near Mobile at all?
well, it's way up the river from Mobile. It's west of Montgomery, heading toward Mississippi, but it's on the Alabama River.
Because I was gonna bring this up too. This was out of Mobile, Alabama, the Mobile
That's
Wolf
not
Woman.
Mobile, the
Oh
Wolf
yeah,
Woman. Yeah.
the Wolf Woman. There's a lot of high strangeness around. All of Alabama is just full of
Oh
all
yeah.
sorts of weird stuff.
You got the white thing, which is supposed to be a white Bigfoot. In fact,
Yeah,
I interviewed a guy from up in North Alabama that's seen the
that's
white thing.
cryptids.
Uh, yep. Now I
Yeah,
ain't never heard about the knot deer. I ain't never heard
the not
about
deer.
that.
That's a Wedowie. You know what? Somebody in the chat was asking if you'd ever heard of Bigfoots around Wedowie. I go to
I've,
Wedowie pretty often.
I've heard some, and actually there
Yeah,
is a Bigfoot museum
there
in Wheat
is.
County.
It's a
Yeah,
little one, but there's one. Yeah.
they're over there. So I've heard some stuff from over in Randolph County. Of course, that borders Clay County and borders Georgia line. Of course, very wooded area. Uh, Chattahoochee River's not far from there either. If you when you cross into Georgia,
Yeah,
what's that name?
past that today.
Franklin, I think Franklin, Georgia.
Oh yeah, that's true. Herd corridor right there.
So,
I go
so
down there quite often.
I've heard a lot of stuff about the Alabama Georgia line. They're all the way from up above Rome, all the way down to Columbus.
Yeah,
Very active,
weird,
very
weird
active place.
stuff. Oh yeah,
Yeah, very active. But yeah, that Lowndes County, um, that is a strange area. I've heard there's a lot of voodoo in that area. What I've heard from some other people who live in that area. Um, and I'll tell you something else you'll notice in Alabama. You probably got it in Georgia and other places. Well, you do have it in Georgia. I know you have it. You'll have like Booger Road or Booger Hill or Booger Holler.
Booger Holler in Floyd County, Rome. Yes.
Rebecca
Yeah.
carried me through there. I don't know if I told you
Yeah.
that.
You did. You did. My mom's first cousin has some property right there, and I got to talk to him. We talked about Bigfoot and stuff. When we last time we saw each other, it was at a funeral, unfortunately, but we got to talking, and I think he thought it was pretty cool that I do some Bigfooting and stuff. But he's got property right there. He's got hunting property actually, I think, out there by Booger Holler
Yeah,
up
that's
there.
when we rode through there. I told Rebecca, I said, "Yeah, there's something here."
Yeah.
And I meant to tell you. I meant to even text you one day and tell you this. when you had that show about the county that you grew up in, I can't remember the county right there.
Paulding
Yeah,
County, Paulding
right.
werewolves. We have a lot of werewolves out there, dogman sightings.
What caught my interest there, real quick, was, and then I went and looked just to see if I was looking at that right. The bulk of the Georgia sightings is right there in that area from there up to Rome.
Yes.
That little area, of course, Helen area had a bunch of sightings, but when I looked, that was the most sightings besides Helen was right there in the Rome, back toward Atlanta, toward the Alabama line area. I said, man, I didn't realize there was that many sightings right in there. So
Yes.
that was real interesting.
Dalton. It's Dalton. I remember there were sightings in Dalton, Rome. Rome had the werewolf attack. There was
Yeah,
actually a family that got attacked up there,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was interesting. Okay,
yeah.
so that's where Booger Holler is up
Right,
there.
right. Yeah, she
Yeah.
took me right through there, and we rode that whole road, and I said, there's no doubt. Uh, and then she talks about Treat Mountain a lot, which is on the Alabama Georgia line. In fact, the Talladega National Forest borders that area in there. We've been gonna go check that area out. I want to one of these days. I want to go really check it out. I've heard some stuff from in that area, so I think a lot of it is Timberland Company, but there's still some dirt roads that you can go through there. I'm gonna go check that out one day. So uh,
Yeah.
that'd be a pretty cool place.
That
But
would be. There's something weird going on with all this area. I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, I know like up in, and that's where like Corpsewood Manor is like up that direction too, like near Chickamauga kind of. It's about, I think it's about Greg Smith told me it's about an hour south of Chickamauga is where Corpsewood Manor is. But you know, that's where these like that famous story of those men that were unalived, as we say here on YouTube, unalived up there, and they were devil worshippers and
right,
stuff. I mean, and the rumor is that Anton LaVey, the head of the Church of Satan, like showed them where to put their house and
I
everything. There's
heard
got to be some kind of ley lines or something right there.
right. I heard that, and I've heard a lot of people that went up there has got sick or hurt. Uh, they say stay away from that area, and
Yeah,
I heard there's even weird people live still up in there. So
yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
yeah,
When I was up there, we found there was blood everywhere. It looked like somebody had done like some kind of ritual sacrifice or something. When we got
yeah.
up there, it turned out it was really was human blood. We found out whose blood it was later on.
Wow,
Somebody had had an accident with an axe. They were chopping wood, and we had made a little video with my team and put it on YouTube. I mean, this was probably almost 15 years ago, and we could tell that people had left out of there like a herd of this is at Corpsewood Manor, like a herd of elephants, and we were seeing all that. I mean, there's a lot of ritualistic weird stuff up there, like pictures of people and wax candles, you know, just like stuff you'd
weird.
use for rituals. Yeah, it was kind of a gross feeling. I didn't like it, but you could tell somebody had left. We were hoping it was kind of like chicken blood or something, but it turned out to be real human blood everywhere. But this kid, I guess it was a kid because his mom contacted us, said that he was out chopping wood. They were trying to start a fire. I don't know if they had a Ouija board or what. They were up there just to hang out, and the hatchet slipped, and it chopped him in his thigh,
Mm.
and he almost died. And they had to run him out of there. They had to carry him out of there and take him to the hospital.
Well, I've heard
So
some, and then you get on up Chickamauga, that battlefield where
yeah,
I love Civil War battlefields. That's one of my big things. I've been to Vicksburg, Shiloh, Mobile Bay, and me and Rebecca's actually going to see Gettysburg this fall. That's the one she's really, because Rebecca's more into the paranormal. She really likes the paranormal stuff. I kind of like to get away from the paranormal,
yeah.
but you
It
can't
all
see
it
it.
all goes it's all hand in hand though. Like it kind of all goes
Yeah,
together, doesn't it?
yeah, they are. And
Yeah.
but that Chickamauga was a very strange battlefield to me. Uh, the layout. And one of the reasons was my great great grandfather fought in that battle. He was in that Second Alabama Cavalry Unit, and toward the end of the war, when Sherman was marching through Georgia, the Second Alabama Cavalry Unit came in on the tail end of the Yankee Army or Union Army, however you want to call it. And so I knew that was a battle that my great great grandfather had been involved in, and so that made that place a little more strange to me for some reason. That I had kinfolks that had fought in a war right there in that area. But I'm gonna tell you, I could see where something would live on that battleground because there's a lot of woods in there, and thick woods. That was some thick stuff in there, and
They
all that.
got old green eyes, Mark. Old green eyes, right?
That's what I've heard. Yeah,
That's,
I've heard that.
something gets could be like a gugway or something. Maybe some
Yeah,
kind of a Bigfoot or Dogman.
yeah, I've heard that. So.
You know what else is interesting? I know this is kind of terrible to say this, but people go there to. Got to be careful how I say it on YouTube, but to self delete, if you know what I mean, to take their own lives. They do that on the battlefield there to this day.
That's
It's
crazy.
strange, right?
Yeah. I don't
It's
know why
almost like that place is calling them there to do it, or it's just some kind of weird energy there for that.
Well, all up through there, that was a big battle. People don't realize that thing lasted a long time. That march to Atlanta and from Chattanooga down, and that's just I don't know. That was Shiloh didn't bother me that much. And then by the way, there's Bigfoot in Shiloh too. I have a buddy that lives there at Shiloh, and he's a ghost hunter, and he's the one that let me know about there were Bigfoot in there. And then he had his first Bigfoot experience on Creepy Mountain, though. That was crazy. So, and that was a wild one. I had to tell you about that sometime. That was a pretty good one. He became a quick believer in Bigfoot after that.
I bet.
But he said that they were there around Shiloh. Because Tennessee River runs right by it, and there's a bunch of woods there. And he said they were definitely in there in Shiloh, and plus a lot of ghosts and paranormal there, of course. But anywhere where you have a lot of bloodshed and that type of, you're gonna have stuff there. There's no doubt. So we're really
It's,
looking forward to Gettysburg, and I hope I can go ahead and feed them too while we're there if we can. We'll see. But
that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Lots of ghosts. I mean, it's all connected. It's all connected somehow. And where there's ghosts, and that's how we really locate like the areas that my teams research is by local legends and lore. Okay,
right,
we look for places because if you've got like a ghost legend there, like down in Statesboro, I saw somebody who was writing about Statesboro and that their sister or somebody has had a dogman encounter. There's dogman. I went to school at Georgia Southern. Okay, so I used to live in Statesboro. I used to live down there, and we used to go on the weekends. We would go to Ghost Road, and you get down there, and this is the local legend. You get down there, and it was like I don't know if it was supposed to be a Civil War soldier or like a Revolutionary War soldier. I think we said it was a Civil War soldier. But you could clearly see when you pull up to this road, there was a street light in the middle of a field. It was just random. And there's a soldier carrying a gun with a bayonet. And he just would walk back and forth like he was patrolling that road right there.
wow.
And you could drive into him basically if you had enough, I don't know, I was gonna say balls. you would
I don't.
you would ride right. You just drive into him,
Yeah.
and he disappears. It was
Well,
weird.
yeah, it's crazy. My mother, my grandfather ran a grist mill. Here in close to here, Cuyahoga grist mill. It was built before the Civil War. One of the only ones in this area didn't get burnt down by the Union Army. And uh, my mother grew up right across the road from it, and there's Bigfoot there at that. Because part of it's the Army base, though Alabama AOW, where they made gunpowder for World War II and everything, and they made the what they call the heavy water for the atomic bomb was made there for World War II. But
Oh, wow.
my grandfather would see a lot of stuff around that grist mill because he'd have to work late at night, and uh, he would see paranormal stuff. There's old covered bridge still there. It's called the old. It's the Cuyahoga Grist Mill on the old Georgia Road. That's the old road that the Native Americans would use way back in the 1700s. That was their road that they used to go into Georgia on. And it come across, and they kept calling it the old Georgia Road for years. Uh, but one night he was coming out of the grist mill, heading home. Of course, this was like in the 1930s, and he could hear hoofs on the bridge, like somebody was coming across the bridge with a horse or something. And this is going to sound crazy, but he could hear a bell.
Mhm.
A lot of people used to put bells and stuff on their horses, where they could keep up where they're at or something. But all of a sudden, he said a headless cow come walking off the bridge down the ramp. A headless cow, and then disappears right in front of it.
Whoa.
Now, and this is true, and this may be why there's a lot going on there. Of course, the cow part, I believe he's seen what he's seen
Oh, yeah.
because my mother and them seen stuff as they was growing up too. But they said there was a lady in the 1800s, like 1890, that was coming across the bridge on her hut, had her horse and her buggy. Something spooked the horse as she was coming off the bridge. And there's a railroad track right there too. Railroad's still there. Well, the horse spooked, took off. She couldn't control it, and the buggy wrecked on the railroad track.
Oh,
But
no.
when it throwed her off, somehow she got stabbed. I don't know if
Oh,
it's something laying there by the railroad, but it stabbed her and killed her. Now they said that really happened there. There's no doubt about that. There's documentation about it. But my grandfather and one of my older uncles at the time, which was a young man, he would have probably been like 10 or 12 years old. They had worked late there at the grist mill. They were coming out to head to the house. And when they come out and started walking, there was this woman sitting in the ditch with a stick or something sticking out of her. And she turned and looked at them, then disappeared. Well, of course, that scared the devil out of her. Well, about a month later, my grandfather was coming out of there by himself again one late night, and this time the lady was there again. Well, he got the nerve to speak to her. He said, "Lady, what can I do to help you get away from here?" She turned and looked at him. She said, "Nothing can help me," and disappeared.
Oh.
And she spoke back to him, and that's when it really freaked him out.
Oh, my
And
God.
uh, and so that was some stuff. They say you can be up there late at night and you can hear that mill start up, but it don't start up. But it's like it's really running because it runned off big turbines up under the mill that they brought. They brought these big French stones from France to do the grinding. And they have a big turbine under the mill, and they use water to turn them turbines. They
Yeah.
said it sounds like that mill will crank up at night sometimes, and sound like it's up there running. So it's just uh, it's just crazy. And they say there's a Dogman been seen there one time, and several Bigfoot there on the railroad. So it's definitely another hot spot for activity. Uh, we had a outing. Well, not really outing. We had a fire pit night up there in April this year, and in fact, I was doing a live on our show. We had a couple other people there, and we were getting vocalizations while the live was going on across the creek.
Oh, wow.
And some of the people in the chat heard the vocalizations through the computer picking it up. Now, there's definitely one across the creek was hollering out. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's another place that's just got a lot of stuff going. And it's a park. Anybody can go there. You can camp out there. It's a real beautiful place. So if you ever close to Chillersburg, Alabama, Go check it out. It's called Kyle Gristmill. And,
I want to go check that place out. I also wanted to tell you, talking about the phantom, just the ghosts in general, and hearing that grist mill cranking back up. I had one incident with my son, and I had taken him to Pickett's Mill battlefield out of Georgia. It's in Paulding County, by the way, where all the werewolves are. Okay, and Pickett's Mill battle was pretty important during the Civil War. Okay, I say important. It was a big battle. Okay, pretty big battle, especially very well known in northeast, northwest Georgia.
right.
That and like the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain as well, and several battles, Chickamauga. But Pickett's Mill was a big one, and so we went for a storytelling Halloween walkthrough, like where they had guys that were dressed like Civil War and Union soldiers, and they were like zombies and ghosts and stuff. It was pretty wild, but it was like a haunted forest. And this woman walked us through, and she was like a storyteller. Well, my son and I, we were like the last group to go that night, and it was kind of scary actually. I didn't know it was for adults, not kids. Apparently, I don't know. I took my kid though because I thought it was for kids.
Right.
But he was really little at the time. And when we were walking back to the vehicle after it was over, the cannon started firing on the battlefield. Mark, they
Wow.
started firing, and the ground was shaking, and we could hear like boom, and it was every, I'm gonna say like every 30 seconds or so, like there was like another just huge boom going off. And I looked at my son, I was like, are they shooting cannons? Like there's no way they're shooting cannons. It was late at night. It was like 11 o'clock at night at least. I mean, it was getting late. And though it turns out they were not shooting cannons that night, but yet we heard it and we felt it. So it was some kind of residual, I guess. I don't know. It was weird. But
I
we heard that.
wonder if sometimes we're seeing time come by again. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but we're seeing glimpses of time from the past. Maybe it brings itself forward for a minute. Like there's a timeline. I don't know. I've thought about that a lot of times. If we're actually seeing, it's coming back around for a second. It's made its way around and it comes back again one day. Just like with that grist mill cranking up every now and then. I mean, it just don't make sense. Why that thing, would be making the sounds, but when you go down there, it's not actually running, but you hear it running. It's just one of those crazy. And I'll tell you something we got over here in Alabama. I don't know if y'all have this going on in Georgia or not. Y'all ever get the loud booms and nobody can tell you where it's coming from?
Yes. Yeah. I've heard that from several people actually. Yeah.
Of course, some people say, well, that's people playing with that. What's that stuff? You can buy it. I can't remember the name of it now. But these sounds like they're coming from the sky, what we sound like. And you'll start hearing people all over. I mean, 40 miles away it heard it. So that tells you it ain't a local sound. I mean, it had to be up in the atmosphere. I don't think it's jets going at the sound of speed. It's a different sound than that. You can usually tell when a jet hits the sound barrier because they used to do it over us all the time from Maxwell Air Force Base and Montgomery. And I think they broke out too many windows back in, and people got mad, and they had to kind of quit doing that. But this is a totally different sound. So y'all hearing it too. So it just makes me wonder what's going on there. There you go, Cryptidville.
Cryptidville, they're all saying tannerite. There's a few people saying tannerite in here.
But I don't think that's what's going off. This is, I worked out the marble quarries for years, and they used, to blast the marble. And this is 10 times louder than that when it happens. And it's just a crazy sound, It's just, and it ain't a jet hitting, sound barrier or nothing either. So.
Oh yeah. Joe Monk says, "Hey Joe Monk, If you ain't first, you're last. Okay. When we say people from the past, is it possible that they can see us? Maybe we're the ghost. I've pondered that too. Okay. Yeah, it's almost like we say, like at the meadow, where we do our research. It's like maybe it's a place where like all the dimensions are overlapping there. Like there's some kind of dimensional overlap. They say that time is just a human construct, and the past, the present, and the future are all happening right now. So I don't know. It makes my brain hurt, Mark, thinking about this
It does
sometimes.
me too. But that's what I've wondered sometimes, if we're just getting glimpses of the past coming back by.
Yeah,
I don't know, but and it's
I
it's
think
that
so.
same thing too, where like you go somewhere before, you go somewhere, but you've never been there. But when you get there, you say, "Well, I've been here before." Where's that come from? Is that and I mean some of that crazy stuff like that, and I mean I've been to a couple of places that I've never been to before, but I knew I had. But what I found out is my kin people, my ancestors, had been there before. So
Oh,
what was going on was their DNA that I got in me recognizing the place, or was my DNA recognizing that my ancestors been here before? I mean,
yeah.
and I didn't know they'd been there till later on, but I'd been there, I've been there, and it was like, man, this place feels like home, or like where I belong here, or something. And then you find out later, and that really happened to me at a place that I was actually booger hunting. And for years, I didn't know that my great 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 grandfather owned that property at one time.
Oh,
That
wow.
I did Bigfoot hunting on, and I didn't know that. And another cousin of mine said, "Hey, that belonged to our great great grandfather." And I said, "Do what?" So I mean, it was crazy. You don't
You
have that.
know
You know,
that okay, so something similar happened with my family with that kind of. My sister bought my grandparents' property where they lived, and there was always this old homestead on the property, right? This old house. We used to go and like dig for the pottery and like all these like metals and whatever was at this old homestead, right? That had been it had been burned down. I don't know what happened to it. It was gone. There was just like the remnants of like the ruins of this old homestead, right? And it turns out my uncle was doing some research and found out that our great 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 grandparents owned our family owned that property a long time ago before my grandfather ever bought it, and our family had no idea. And to top it off, one of our great grandmothers way back is buried in my sister's yard, and we didn't know it. So
wow,
what are the odds of that happening? Like,
that's yeah,
we had no idea.
right.
So it's just kind of weird.
Sometimes stuff comes back to you. It's weird, and that floored me when I found out that my grandfather, great 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 grandfather, I mean, all the way back to 1840, owned that property for a while, and I'd been going out because another guy was able to go on the property because his property was next door, and he had some boogers on his property, and and that's right, Ken. Yeah, that's what yeah. Um,
Thank you, Ken.
yeah.
Let me
Uh,
read that for the podcasting community out here. When Clan Ken says, "Blood memory happens a lot, especially for Native descendants."
yeah.
That's I've actually heard that before too. Yeah,
Yeah, I think our DNA screams out when we're around stuff that's familiar to us.
it does. I think so too. I think so too. Man, this has been a fantastic talk tonight, Mark. You and I could talk for hours. We could talk for
Yeah.
hours. I think now we just I think we just hit the this is the longest show I've ever had on my channel. I think we just hit the barrier. Okay,
Okay.
so no, which is great. No, I'm saying it's great. Like this is the longest show that I have ever done, and I love it. And we could honestly go on forever. But I see people they've been well. Actually, I thought people were leaving, but we must have had some more people that just came in. This is awesome. But why don't we save some of the talk for the next time? I want to bring you back on the show
Yeah.
because it's getting late. Yes, I
Anytime.
would love to bring you back on, and Rebecca too. Man, I know Rebecca had to go. She's got to be up early in the morning.
Well,
But
I
please,
got a lot more stuff I can. I mean, I hadn't scratched the surface. I'll just be honest. I mean, I can go into more detail next time on a lot of stuff. I mean, I didn't even tell about
yeah,
my first site in there in Lowndes County. I've just, I ain't even went into that. So, and I can tell you about a lot of properties that I've been on that people are willing for me to tell. And so, yeah, I've
I
got
would
plenty.
love that. Well, let's save it for the next time because this is the best 3 hour show ever.
I've
This
enjoyed
is
it too.
amazing.
I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you
Thank
having
you.
us on. And I have to get you on our channel one night. We'll
I
talk
would
some
love to.
more over there and everything. So we got a good group of folks, and so
Yeah, you do. You got a good group of friends, and a lot of them I consider my friends as well.
right.
And I have a really great time. I have really enjoyed going out in the woods with you guys and getting to go to Hollands. And I really appreciate y'all inviting me out there and exchanging stories. And I think when we start swapping stories and we're making connections with some of this stuff, like the maybe the people's deaths being covered up and the stories not matching and stuff. Um, I think it's going to take us talking about stuff like that and sharing our stories with other researchers and people who are looking into these things for us to seeing there's something fishy going on, right? Just a little
Oh yeah,
something fishy going on.
there's something weird about it. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there is. There is. But nonetheless, thank you so much for sharing all your stories with us tonight, Mark. All your encounters and your investigations you've done, and I from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. And I know the audience has really enjoyed this tonight. And you and Rebecca have your YouTube channel. Would you like to tell the audience about your YouTube channel and whatever else you'd like to promote tonight, if you got
Well,
anything?
of course, we're Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead Live. I do occasional what I call fireside videos. That's usually where I talk to people about their encounters or what different things. Sometimes I get off into other subjects about the Nephilim or some other stuff. I don't get off in that deep. I need to really start getting a little deeper with that on some stuff. Uh, uh, but a lot of our stuff's also homesteading. In fact, that's what our channel started off of was homesteading. And Rebecca was putting out videos, just showing about plants, animals, how to do stuff. And of course, we're not experts or nothing like that. I mean, you'll never hear me or her claim that, but we just like to help people, show them how. Me and her goal is to be more and more self sufficient, you know, and to not be tied to the system as much. And but she came to me one day, and of course I had a couple other friends bring it up. They said, "Hey, you really need to be telling people what's going on about your encounters, other people's encounters, and said, you know a lot of history, you know a lot of what's going on in your area, so you need to be putting that down as where people know, but also a history where somebody can go back and it's there." And so I started uh, talking about Creepy Mountain, then started getting into Talladega National Forest, and then started interviewing people again. And since then, I've been called to some people's properties again. So I've took that back up, going to visit properties, and
Nice.
so it's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of new people that I consider family. A lot of them I talk to on a regular basis. Enjoying it, having a good time, and that's what we got. We need to have a good time too, you know. And I mean, this is a
That's what it's
serious.
all about.
It's
It's
a
all about
serious
having a
subject.
good.
Yeah. So, but so that's it. But yeah, come join us. We do a live every Friday night, unless something's going on. Uh, I have to work every other Friday night, so sometimes Rebecca would do them by herself, and then sometimes I put out videos. Either with interviews or if I got something going on, I'll show it and stuff. So just different things like that. So,
And it's awesome. You have a great group of friends that are always in your chat too, and a lot of those friends are in our chat tonight. And a lot of people that I got to meet at Hollands are in the chat tonight.
oh yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
I'm super excited. And some people that I missed at Hollands, okay, who were there on the days that I wasn't there,
yeah.
who I would look forward to meeting too at the next event. Maybe I'm gonna try to make it out anytime you guys have something out there. I'd love to come back.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we'll probably do something sometime this fall. I don't know exactly where we'll do it at. We may be back at Hollands, or we may try a new spot out. We'll definitely be having some smaller outings, and I know there's been some talk about a meet and greet again, maybe next spring, but I don't know uh, about that yet. But there's been some talk about it. It may be go back to LBL. We may go back to LBL on that one. I don't know, since that's kind of a central location for a lot of people. Which I like the LBL. That's another weird place up there. That's
Yeah.
weird too. So
I hadn't been there yet, so I am. I need to go. I need to
you do
go. Yeah, I do.
you need to
I
go
do.
at least experience that place one time. There's definitely some crazy stuff up there too. You know, it's I'd say it's even more active than down in here. It's a very active place and
Yeah.
very
I
beautiful
don't
place.
know. It's beautiful. You know what? I'd like to explore Holland a little bit more, especially after those two weird creatures that I ran into leaving the camp that night.
Well,
That's
you just anytime you want to come over, just get with me. Me and Rebecca, we'll go and I'll
okay.
show you more. Just come over one Saturday and we'll ride you through a bunch of it. That way
Okay.
you can learn it. And because there's a lot more to it just than just the campground. There's a lot of
Yeah.
places.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm down for that. I'm always down to explore some more for sure. And Ken, I missed you, and I can't wait to meet you in the future, for sure. I was only there for a day. I didn't spend the night, and if I had spent the night, I wouldn't have had that encounter with those two weird things as I was leaving. Okay, so I'm kind of glad I left just so I could have that experience. Okay, even though I didn't know I was going to,
Well, we're glad you
but
got to come and I'm
thank
glad it
you.
wasn't too of a terrifying encounter what you had. I'm glad you
It
was able
wasn't.
to get on down the road from it. So
It
uh,
was confusing. It wasn't even terrifying at all. I was just sitting there trying to figure out what I was looking at.
well,
Like,
a
what
lot of
is
times
that?
that's what it is. It's confusing more than it's terrifying sometimes because you like, what am I looking
Yeah,
at? And
yeah, that's what it was. Well, I like to bring up like these charts. Like we have charts, Mark. It's like, here, let me take this down for just a second. We have these charts that I've always gone by when I'm describing Bigfoot or I'm describing Dogmen. And in these charts, everything is kind of mapped out. Like, well, we've got these categories, and this is what it is. And you look at this chart of all these dogmen, and what I saw doesn't fit any of those. So if it's a dogman, the closest it would be like that hyena one right there, but it was all black, and it had really shiny white teeth. It had like very bright teeth on it, and so it doesn't really fit the bill with like any of those right there. So, but in my mind, I'm thinking it's got to be like one of those categories, but it wasn't. So that's why it's so confusing. It's like it's nothing like I've ever seen or imagined seeing. So
well, they could be just like us. They're all different shapes and forms, and so um, I mean,
yeah,
like in corn patch pictures, there's some of that stuff in there. I have no idea what in the world that is. I mean, what I'm looking at, I know I'm looking at something, but what it is, I have no idea. It's crazy.
and you had mentioned earlier about something looking like a Bigfoot or a dog. I think it was a Bigfoot, maybe looking like a cartoon, like cartoonish, right? Because that's how it's described a lot when people have an experience with a cryptid, a dog man, especially. They say they look like they're kind of cartoonish.
Yes, yeah, yeah. That
Yeah,
one I was saying, it looked kind of like a dog man looking thing. It was in the right side of the picture. I mean, it did. It had this cartoonish look to it. It's kind of weird. And Some people ask me, do I think the camera was picking it up, but it was on the other side, maybe the other side of the veil? I don't know. It could be. I mean, I'm not going to rule nothing out.
Yeah.
I know our
Some of,
cameras pick up
yeah.
some stuff that our naked eye can't. So,
Well, just to compare it to something that's like my everyday life is that my son used to watch these cartoons, right, when he was little, smaller than he is now. And it was like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or like the Spider-Man multiverse. They show you like parallel realities in these cartoons.
right.
And sometimes like the Spider-Man, for instance, he'd be one version in this world and another version. He was always just a little bit different, but he was Spider-Man in all the universes. And sometimes they would overlap and he would meet himself, but he'd be like cartoonish compared to like more three-dimensional reality. So maybe that's kind of like what's going on here. It's like we're just over, the dimensions are overlapping and some of them are cartoonish, and we do have Dogman. I know it sounds weird, but
I know where you come from. I know
you know what I
exactly what
mean. Do you get what I'm saying? Because I don't know. I'm just,
it,
I can only
I know.
compare it to that.
All
So
this stuff is strange. It's strange.
it is.
No doubt
It
about
is. Well, we're working on trying to figure it out, and will we ever? I don't know, but I'm having fun experiencing it all. So
it. Oh yeah.
I'm here for it, and I think it's a blessing for us to be able to have these experiences. As scary as they can be, sometimes it's still cool in my book. So yeah. Well, Mark, you stay safe out there, okay?
I will.
And
I will.
and thank you so much for sharing. Creepy Mountain with us. Creepy Mountain and all your experiences. And please, let's schedule you soon to come back, and we're gonna do this again, okay?
Okay.
And
Sounds
and
good.
bring Rebecca back, okay?
I will. I will.
Okay. Well, awesome. And you guys, please go over to Mark and Rebecca's YouTube channel, Cedar Creek Bottoms Homestead on YouTube. You guys subscribe and check them out. Mark, you guys go live every Friday, right? Is
Pretty
it
much.
Friday?
Pretty much every Friday at 7 o'clock
Just
Central Time.
8 o'clock Eastern. Okay, so you guys go and check it out. It's really awesome, and I always learn something every time I tune in
Oh yeah.
from you guys.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks again for being here tonight. It was amazing, and I super big time enjoyed it. And I also, before we go tonight, y'all, I wanted to thank everybody who gave super stickers tonight. I know I wasn't able to thank you right when you did it, but Kent Baxter, thank you so much. Blanche LeBlanc, thank you so much for that super sticker. And Jared Crazy Indian, thank you for gifting that Cryptid Huntress the Hunt Club membership. Mark, my YouTube membership over here is called the Hunt Club, and you've been
Okay.
talking about your hunt club, so I think that's really fun. We actually
That's
have the Hunt Club here on my channel. Okay,
cool.
so yeah, it's not the same kind of hunt club, but it's a hunt club where I put
Right.
out exclusive videos for everybody. And so yeah, if you guys want to join that, hit the join button on my YouTube channel. And thank you guys so much for all your support. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I hope you all learned something. And I want to thank my moderators, everybody for being here tonight. Y'all mean the world to me. And I hope you'll come back and see me on Monday at 1 p.m. I will be back live, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 Central. I'll be back live with a great show for you guys. And thanks to everybody, all my friends for being here tonight. And shout out to everybody in Florida at the Day of Being. Hope you guys had fun today. And Mark, thanks again. Have a wonderful evening. You guys don't live in fear, live in awareness, keep your head on a swivel, and stay safe out there. We're living in crazy times. Okay. But yeah, just get out there and enjoy life though. And just be aware. Okay. All right, Mark, have a great night. You guys, I'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you. And tell Rebecca I said thank you and good night.
All right. I
All
sure
right,
will.
everybody. Thank you, Mark. All right. See y'all. Bye.
Bye bye.